this evening. I have the Spring Sports Awards that Tom Gallagher passed along to me. So this evening, we have the Baker Division champions in girls track and girls lacrosse, the D6 MSTCA State Relay champions in girls track, D4 Final Four champs, girls lacrosse. The girls lost in the championship game, unfortunately. Baker Division Coach of the Year, Marty Bennett for girls track, John Tracy in boys tennis. And the Baker Division Sportsmanship Award went to girls track and softball. Individual awards, baseball first team All-Star Drew Lane, pitching and first base. Second team All-Star Dylan York, pitcher and infield. Softball, second team All-Stars, Olivia Driscoll, center field and infield, Julia Hubbard, second base. Boys lacrosse, first team All-Stars, Will Gromko, Lewis Harrington, and Will Harrington. Second team All-Stars, Finn Wright. Girls lacrosse, first team All-Stars, Allie Greenleaf, Estelle Gromko, Ella Stein, and Allie Weil. Second team All-Stars, Lucy Winthrop. Boys track, silver medal, Anj Chishambe, Chimbambe. I think I got that right. Good, okay. And girls track, silver medal, Kamaya Perrin for pole vault, and bronze medal, Lily Harper for the 400-meter dash, and Alana Novello for 100-meter hurdles. So that's all it is.
Sound at home.
There's no sound at home.
No sound at home.
There's no, okay.
Oh.
He should be able to hear us in there. There's no sound at
sound
home
at home,
at this
booth.
point. Be out the back door and just let him know in the booth.
We have to redo all that, or is it?
Oh, Tony's.
It's recorded, so.
He double-checked on his phone, and he can hear you fine.
Okay,
Okay.
Maybe people at home need to put their
Static to
volume
jump on.
okay.
Well, let me know if anybody else hears that we don't have sound at home. Okay.
Special acknowledgements. This is fine. Okay.
Okay. Okay.
If there is a problem, then it's not in the booth, it's on ICAM's end across the street, which we have no control over.
That happening or no?
Yes, we can do that now.
Oh, unless you want to do it in your superintendent report. Okay.
We'll do it then, but we can do it now.
Okay. One more.
One more. So this evening, I was going to do this during my superintendent report, but I'll do it now as a special acknowledgement as well. So we have a number of retirements this year. So we have Bill Gallant, teacher at the high school here, retired at the end of the year. Dr. Beverly Hedges, also at the end of the year. Mary Beth Matthews, a paraeducator at the end of the year. Laura Replier, although her official last day is August 5th, her last day of work was June 30th. Susan Speak, also June 30th. And Jen Spencer McAdams, whose last day is 8/21/24, although her last day of work was also June 30th. So I think what it is folks retire actually on their birthday or around their birthday for different reasons. So that's it. Nope.
Okay, great. Thank you. Yay, and thank you to all of those, a lot of people that have been here for a long time retiring, so it's exciting, and we thank you for your many years of service.
We do have a kindergarten teacher, but she's technically retiring next year. 'Cause
Oh.
it's not till, I think, October or November.
Okay. All right. So, any other special acknowledgements tonight from anybody?
That's it for me.
Okay. I don't have any remarks from the chair tonight, so we will move on to public comments. And I do see some people from the public, so I'm going to read our public comment statement that's on all of our agendas. And then I'll invite anyone who's here to speak. So public comment is not, and this is from our policy on public comment at open meetings. So public comment is not a discussion, debate, or dialogue between individuals and the school committee. It is an individual's opportunity to express an opinion on issues within the school committee's authority. While the committee and/or administrators will not typically respond during public comment, the chair, as presiding officer of the meeting, may choose to if he or she deems it expeditious. Furthermore, should the chair believe that an issue falls outside the purview of the school committee, he or she may request that citizens direct it to the appropriate person or body so that the matter is given proper consideration. We request that public comment is limited to 3 minutes per person and a total of 15 minutes overall. So with that, I will welcome you to public comment.
Pulsifer, I'm a FEFI, and I'm here to ask the school committee to consider finding within the $1 million plus FEFI grant $3,000 to fund an intern for the summer 2024. The job of the intern would be to prepare a data gathering form, collect useful information on every grant that the school committee makes. That data would be then used to benefit the teachers, benefit the school committee and the school department, and also the town. $1 million a year is not an insignificant amount. And the benefit of these grants is appreciated by the individual students, but that doesn't flow uphill. We, the parents, would like to see this information flow up to benefit the town, the school department, the committee, and particularly the individual teachers who have taken the time to write a grant and pursue it over and above their normal teaching load. In order to prepare the data gathering form is an administrative task. We have a model that was presented by you. It is adequate, but can be improved. It is also designed for paying grants, and we, the FEFIs, would like to see it spread over lateral progressive grants as well. The form would collect uniform data about a grant such that an analysis could be made of the effectiveness of the grant, such that teachers, the school department, students could be proud of how that money was used. So I'm not quite sure how to ask within the school department's organization. But I would like to ask the school department to find within the funding $3,000 for a summer intern position to accomplish this work. And I am very happy on behalf of the FEFIs. My term, by the way, expires the end of June. But I've received approval from the FEFIs to continue working on this project. And I will work with the intern to see it through and then help them with the advice of the school committee to see that it works. Open to questions, otherwise I've used up my 3 minutes.
Okay. Thank you very much. Yeah, we've had some emails about this, but I appreciate you coming, and we need to,
We have an
Take it.
intern, we have the draft grant. All we need to do is to get, okay to get started. That's what I'm asking.
okay,
Thank you.
thank you.
Thanks, Nat.
Wendy White. I live on Pine Swamp Road. I'm a part of the Ipswich High School Council. Today I wrote you on the school committee an email because I just have been mulling so much in my mind about all the information that may not be, public knowledge, and that I think some of it's relevant when you make decisions. I had 2 points about the handbook policy that you're going to be looking at tonight. The first one was the new cell phone ban, which includes a laptop ban as well. Just if you didn't get to read because it was just today, just to quickly summarize, this came out of order, and I've never seen it handled this way, to put policy into place and announce it before everybody got to speak about it and vote on it. It was not, it was announced before it was brought up at our June 10th school council, and it was not vetted. It was put up on the screen, and it had already been announced. So I just had a couple of points that I feel like some things may have been missed. There are implications that we probably didn't consider because this was so rushed. I do understand the need for it, and I understand the teachers' frustration. I just think that there's other possible ways we could do things. One of them I'm very concerned about is the seniors being disadvantaged in terms of college applications. I'm a college consultant. I do this for a living. I do think that there are times when you need to handle cell phone situations and use your personal email in the course of applications, which start as early fall. There's no time to make mistakes for the seniors right now. My daughter happens to be a senior, but looking out for everybody. I think part of our mission statement as a school is self-management, and I think that seniors, by the time they're seniors, have earned that right to self-manage themselves and learn how to do that before they go off to college. So I had one idea, which was that at least they could have access to their cell phones and possibly their laptops during our blocks, so that they would have a short block during the day. None of us are off our phones for 7 hours every day. And as adults, we all know how difficult that can be. So I do think that it's fair to them to consider that policy. Also, the chemical policy, much debated. We've been through this for 6 months of meetings at the school council. You guys have been through it. While you look at the whole handbook tonight, I wonder how it can be separated if we were to have questions about the in the presence of, because that's primarily what a lot of us had problems with. Context of the school council being that a lot of us wanted that out of there, and Principal Mitchell felt very strongly that he wanted that in, and that's how he wanted his school culture to run. So with that information, we did the best we could with coming up with a policy. I think the new policy is so much better than the old one, and I hope that most of it is considered, but I wonder if there's a way to section out your votes tonight to account for not just voting in the whole handbook all at once, but taking that into account, that there are issues here still that aren't solved, and a lot of it is good, but that part is particularly controversial with a lot of parents. And I've had 4 kids through the high school. I don't think it's the high school's job to manage my kids' time on the weekend when they're out of school rounds, and I think that's a police officer's job and a parent's job. So that's my personal opinion. That's come up a lot. And thank you. I don't want to take any more time. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Hi, good evening. Tony Morad. I live on Central Street. I'm here tonight because I did write you a letter, so I don't really, I'm on a board myself, so I know when I write in, everyone reads what I write, so I don't want to rehash it here, but I was concerned seeing on the agenda that there was just a review/approval of the handbook. And I think similar to Wendy, I think that there's some unfinished business, particularly with the in the presence of. I think that I hope that it was clear in my letter the many reasons why in the presence of is not a good idea. It really does cause more problems than it solves. It puts our kids here in Ipswich at a large disadvantage for just socializing, potentially. I mean, it basically establishes a way that everyone gets in trouble, whether they're breaking the law or just socializing with their friends, which I think we want them to do, right? We want our citizens to have a good, strong school culture where they interact in a social setting outside of school. So I think it's a very important point, and I think it's critical, too, that, you know, the MIAA specifically take it out, and no other town has it in. So we would be the outlier in having that in there, and a huge disadvantage for our kids when we're competing with the students in Manchester, Essex, in Hamilton, Wenham, in Amesbury, in Newburyport, where none of these, no one across the country has, you know, this risk of socializing. So I also am concerned about, I'm concerned that if it is sort of lumped together in this, you know, review/approval, I don't know how the workings of this go, where if a vote can be separated out, where there could be a little bit more consideration given to this particular thing. And I think that, you know, punishing everyone for the behavior of a few is just a bad idea. It's a very archaic way of thinking, right? I mean, you know, you would never say to a kindergarten class, okay, class, no one's going out for recess because Billy's not sitting in his seat, you know? I mean, that's just a very archaic way of managing things. And I think that in itself does not lend to a very strong school culture, which is really what we want. And we want these policies to be in line with helping, creating, nurturing a strong school culture. So, thank you. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Pete Biletza, Argilla Road. I have 2 kids at the high school and 1 kid in the middle school, and I am the assistant coach of the girls volleyball team. I wrote a letter in the wake of last October Halloween weekend's sort of chaos, and I'm not sure if I sent it to the school committee. I sent it to Dr. Blake, Mr. Mitchell, and to the police chief, where I kind of went into deep analysis of the inconsistencies and gaps in policies. So there were some unwritten rules that were being enforced, and then if you look at the MIA, the CAL, at our middle school, high school, and then the school committee policies, there were a lot of problems. And so I was really happy to see that this topic came up in the school council meeting, that we were going to at least address this at the high school. So I participated. It was my first time working with that group. I came as a parent. I really enjoyed the process. Got bodies made up of teachers, parents, students, and Mr. Mitchell. So good things that happened in that process. We clarified things that were missing, like the policy was largely related to athletes, so we covered athletes, non-athletes, to make this a more general school accountability for behavior around chemicals and substance abuse. So that's really good, and we solved that pretty much the first meeting. The stickler, which Tony referenced, was in the presence of, and I want to kind of talk about some of the reasons. I think Mr. Mitchell he went back and forth. It caused him a lot of consternation to have to deal with that issue in the middle of it, and I feel for him. I would not have wanted to have been in his shoes. I think not having a policy, which is part of what caused the problem, is he had to deal with this ad hoc. And so we went back and forth over the several meetings. We talked about this, about taking it out, putting it back in. He feels very strongly about his responsibility towards children. I think all of the teachers on that board, that sat on that board, have a very, I admire their desire to do the best for the kids. The problem, I think, though, is where do we draw the line between what the school should be doing and what the school shouldn't be doing, and what's jurisdictional? I think it's really easy for us to fall into the situation of, if we don't have a policy, it's the same as condoning something. And I don't necessarily think it's the school's responsibility to do things off campus. One of the examples that Mr. Mitchell shared with us in terms of the jurisdictional legality of this was an early 1900s case where a student was punished. A teacher walked by a student after school. The student said something derogatory towards the teacher. The teacher punished him the next day at school, and that was upheld in the Supreme Court. And it was upheld because it stated that the teacher could not, it negatively affected the authority of the teacher by an out-of-school action. And so that makes a lot of sense. Unfortunately, I don't think that has any relation to what we're talking about here. We're talking about a situation where it's very difficult for all the information from what happens outside of school to filter back to the teachers. And so I think that was the thing that we struggled with as a group to try to decide. One interesting thing that happened when we were in there is Mr. Mitchell shared a story about the Crane Estate. So the Crane Estate had said to us, to Mr. Mitchell, that they were very proud of the Ipswich students, the events that are held at the Crane Estate. And I was sitting there thinking, well, that's great. Like, you know, our students are well behaved. And he also said that this was kind of in light of Manchester Essex being basically banned from having events there due to issues that they had. And so they were relaying to our administration that they were very proud of our students. And I'm thinking, great, like our kids are doing what they're supposed to be doing. But some of the conversation that came after that were like, we should put more restrictions, just to double enforce that. And I think that's the wrong message. I think when kids are behaving themselves and when people are behaving themselves, the action shouldn't be to do more. It's clearly they're proving that they can do that. I also wanted to share some national statistics on drug use and health. This is from the National Institute for Health.
Try to wrap it up, Pete. Sorry, it's
Real
been
quick,
like
just to
way more than 3 minutes, so
Right.
I'll give you a little more time, but
Thanks.
we have a long
So,
meeting. Thanks.
From 2022, from 2002 to 2022, in a study of kids aged 12 to 20, in that period of time, 30 days, they looked at the last 30 days of self-reported drinking. That number went down 47%. So 47% lower in 2022 than in 2002. So you see a large decrease. And I think when I brought that statistic up with the group, I heard, well, you don't know about our school. And so I had a little bit of trouble following the sentiment of, oh, you don't know about our school, when I hear things from the Crane State saying our kids are really behaving themselves, and the national statistics saying that it's on the decrease in general, just for all the different things that's going on with information about that. And then we're still trying to treat our students like they're a problem. I think that you guys should consider that this specific policy is in the present of causing a lot of problems for the administration, for enforcement, and a lot of social and stress on the students who are trying to deal with this as they go through their school year. So I just want to make those points. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Pete.
But I want to express.
Sorry, you just have to say your name.
Oh, hi.
and-
I'm Clara.
Thank you.
And
And your last name, maybe. Sorry, we just need it for the
Santos.
record. Thank you.
I just want to express many opinions of the Ipswich, senior class, junior class about the personal devices. The cell phone, we understand. We are starting to get behind. We are understanding that this is a major issue and that there's many sides to it. But for laptops, there's been many children who have worked for these laptops, for MacBooks, for systems that run better for their education. I personally use a MacBook, and I'm super organized, much better than my other computer from the school. And I just want you guys to look over that and perhaps allow us to have our personal laptops. So many kids are just so upset that they've worked for things and now they're losing it because of other kids' behaviors. And most of these kids, they're AP students, they're honors kids that have worked for this, and they're amazing kids. They're great kids, but we shouldn't neglect the other children. I understand the equity part, but I think that this is completely separate. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Clara. I think this will be our last speaker, if that's okay. Looks like it is anyways.
My name is Jonathan Shivalan. I'm a new member on the Student Council, and I just wanted to bring up some possible solutions for the topic on the ban on personal devices. I was thinking of some deployable out-of-box things that could help solve the fundamental issue that we're facing. Because due to the fact that some of the kids are often misusing their laptops in school for non-school activities, I was suggesting that we can make a firewall system that could prevent the students from going on any blacklisted websites while allowing the teachers to still access those websites if need be from their own profiles. for any like school-related activities that they needed to accomplish. My brother, he used to work on the tech department here, and he was saying this was completely possible, and maybe we could just delve into that a little further and see what we can do. Thank you. I yield my
Thank you.
time.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks, especially students. I know it's hard to come out and speak in front of everybody, so thank you. And thanks to everybody. All right, so we're going to take up those items later in the agenda, but thank you for your comments. I will turn it over to Charlie for his first, well, kind of second high school student representative report, so.
Out for summer break, Ipswich High School students continue to be active members in their community, working, volunteering, relaxing, and enjoying the lack of homework, which I know most of them are very excited about. That being said, I have heard from several students and parents who are concerned with the new handbook changes. The personal device and cell phone policy was introduced to both the student and parents without the consultation of the school council or student advisory, and it felt to a lot of people like they didn't have a voice in the process, or they didn't have a time to say, well, I think it should be like this, or, you know, how can we like compromise on it? I understand that this policy was written by a comprehensive group of teachers, and this is no way to dig at them. I know all the teachers very well, and they're all wonderful, talented teachers, and they work tirelessly for the best of their students, you know, day and night, and they put a lot of time and effort into this. And while the policy involves both the ban of cell phones and personal laptops, the largest complaint that I have heard as a student committee rep was that students feel that the banning of personal laptops isn't always warranted, especially if students follow the current handbook policy, which is having a Chromebook with them. They're allowed to have their Chromebook with them, and then they can use their personal laptops. So that when a teacher requires a lockdown test, they can pull out their Chromebook and take it on the Chromebook instead of on the laptop. There's been 3 really good reasons as to why the policy needs to revert to no personal devices. That having personal devices is an equity issue, that students do not follow the current policy, and that students are often distracted on their own personal devices. The equity issue in particular is kind of a hard thing to argue for, especially because you can find a refurbished laptop online for $50 to $60, which is more powerful than the current school Chromebooks, and don't have any special abilities, but they have a larger screen, they work faster, they allow you to do different things. And I think it's weird that a school would make a policy on an equity issue. I think that it leads the door for a lot of other policies to be made. You know, what equipment can students wear on the basketball or the track field, or, you know, a lot of students can't participate in sports or in clubs because they don't have a car, or they can't walk home. So it's hard to police equity in schools, and I think this is just might be the start of a larger issue. The second reason is that students do not follow the current policies, one that I haven't experienced. And I'm in 7 classes. All of them have required a computer of some kind, and every single student who has a personal laptop, I have always seen have a Chromebook. Or they have their Chromebook in their locker, or they leave their Chromebook in another classroom, or of another teacher, or they leave it to their friends and they'll have it. And the third reason that was presented was that students are distracted on their personal laptops more than they would be on a school computer. But I looked this up, and I kid you not, there are over 63,000 video game websites on the internet right now that are live. And I know our tech department's fantastic, and they do an amazing job, but I think it'd be very difficult to police all 63,000 websites. It's very hard to block thousands of websites, especially when the new ones pop up day and night. Another issue that was raised was that students were messaging each other, and there are over 10,000 personal messaging websites, and many of them are not blocked, such as Twitch and Discord on the school already. I know students who will message each other in the middle of class on Discord, and they have Chromebooks. They don't even have a MacBook or Microsoft device. They text each other in the middle of class, and so I think there's a deeper issue with the current policy, and I felt like it wasn't brought up in a good way, and I know that my fellow student council members and student advisory members also feel like there was very little discussion on this. There wasn't a lot of compromise. Ideally, we thought it could be part of senior privilege. If you can leave the school for 2 hours and be trusted to come back, I feel like it's not a big stretch to say that you can be trusted to have a laptop, rather than a Chromebook. But that's just that, and that's my student report. Thank you.
Charlie, any questions for Charlie? All right, so we are moving on to presentations behind schedule as usual. But, so we're going to have hopefully a quick FE's committee member appointment. Is Alexander Colby here tonight? I do not believe he is. Okay. So quick review. But I don't see. So school committee is responsible for appointing 2 members to the FEFI committee. If you recall, we recently appointed Walter Zagrabski. He is currently serving as the treasurer. So this appointment that is up tonight is to replace our longstanding member, Dick Fades. Fates or Fades? I ask that every week. Fates, Dick Fates, apologies. So this appointment is to replace Dick Fates, who's been on the committee for, I believe, 6 years. His term is up June 30th. And so in our folders, we have a CV of Alexander Colby, who goes by Sandy. So that is in your folders tonight. He comes endorsed by both Walter Zagrabski and Dick Fates. Walter states, I will put in an enthusiastic endorsement. I've known him for almost 50 years and have worked with him for a spell during that period and have always been impressed by his investment acumen. Dick Fates states that they've known each other for 20 years, and Dick actually recommended that he apply to take his spot. So I did invite him to our meeting tonight. I told him it was not mandatory to attend, but so it looks like he's not here tonight, but hopefully people had a chance to review his CV, and I'm happy to answer any questions or talk about it. I mean, historically, we get someone with a really strong investment background. This is a pretty important job, managing all of the money, and they've done an excellent job over the past 12 to 14 years that we've had this new policy with the new FEFIs in place. So do we have any questions or discussion about this?
I do. Definitely a great resume, no question. Did he provide a letter of reason why he wants to be on the FEFIs? Is that something that, like, moving forward, we can ask?
We could.
People
He
to-
did not. He did not.
Say why?
Send a cover letter or anything. Nope. I didn't. Let me see. Look back in my emails with him. He did not. I don't have any additional information.
Okay.
Laura, in his application, you have his application, probably. You don't. Okay. Let me look for it quick.
Just maybe that's something moving forward. We could,
Yeah, I mean, the
You know, when we put
application
out
form
the-
is online. I'm just skimming it now. It's pretty short application. He's 52 years in investments as a security analyst and portfolio manager. He gave his educational background. He has been on the finance committee in Boxford. He is also on the trust fund commission in Ipswich. I know that doesn't really answer your questions, but that's just a
Right.
little
No,
more
that's-
details. And looking at his application, that actually goes to town hall and then got forwarded to us. And he works in town. He's the president and CEO of Ipswich Investment Management in town. But that is something we could ask for in the future, sure.
looks good.
Yeah. I am ready for a motion if you are.
I move to accept, appoint Alexander Colby to the FEFIs as our committee member appointment.
starting
Starting
July 1, I think.
July 1st, 2024.
Second.
So motion by Jen, second by Diana. Any other discussion? All in favor? Okay, 6-0. Great. So I will send him an email tomorrow, and we will get him on board. Thank you. Okay, moving on to, this should be quick, Strategic Planning Committee member appointment. So Strategic Planning Committee formed 4 or 5 months ago. It's representative from all of the 3 boards in town, 2 citizen members, and the town manager. So I've been serving on that committee. I think it's just because it's the turnover of the fiscal year that I need to request reappointment. I would like to continue. We are kind of just getting started, so to me, this is a formality. So unless anyone is really eager to take over my role on Strategic Planning Committee, I would like to continue. It's been interesting. There's a lot of discussion. We're basically talking about all projects the town has to take on in the next 10 to 15 years and try to sort of map them out and budget them. And it's a big task, but it's been interesting. So I would like to continue my.
I move to appoint Kate Elliott as the school committee member representative for the Strategic Planning Committee.
Second.
Okay, it's a motion by Diana, second by Jen. Any other discussion? All in favor? I'll abstain, I guess. So 5 in favor, 0 against, 1 abstain. Thank you, I think.
Thank you for taking that on, Kate.
I've already started, so I feel like
Usually that's when you run for the hills sometimes.
I'm not learning that lesson yet. Okay, so moving on to middle school handbook review approval. So we welcome Peter Janolfi. Yeah, welcome. So,
See me tonight. We have one handbook change for you to consider. It's our behavioral expectations, which replaces the existing code of conduct on page 7. There's very little in the code of conduct in the existing handbook. There's 6 or 7 actual rules that it talks about, and then the discipline is very, very vague. You may have consequences for these actions, and it doesn't really give us a lot of information. So one of the things I did last summer when I was, part of my entry plan was to meet with as many teachers as possible in the school and had conversations, and we basically came out with 5 areas to look at, one of those being discipline, and we formed a discipline committee that met from October through May, and the teachers ran that committee. They were part of that committee and put together a number of recommendations. They researched other schools, what they had in their handbooks. We met, they surveyed the staff, put together a proposal draft, and then the assistant principal, Sean Fitzgerald, and myself met with them and tweaked a few things here or there. I believe you have the final copy that was sent out earlier. I don't know how much you want me to get into it. I can go explain, or I can just answer questions. It's a progressive discipline philosophy. As you'll see, it's stated there's a grid there. The grid's laid out following our TIGERS acronym. We tweaked it a bit to find different headings that correspond with the different infractions. And then there's, like I said, it's progressive, first offense, second, third, and consequences would rise from there. It adds restorative justice into the list of different interventions we have. It adds community service as well, which were not laid out, but probably done here and there, but it makes it much more concrete. We also have a 90-minute detention that we're adding. This is an alternative to suspension. We try not to suspend kids, try to keep everybody in school as much as possible, so that's an alternative to suspension. It increases the parent communication and teacher interventions. For most infractions, parents are reaching out to parents, letting them know what happened. In the past, it was really left a lot upon Mr. Fitzgerald to reach out and explain. He's sort of the middleman in a lot, so it definitely brings the students and teachers and parents closer together. And it's very transparent. It's going to be there for everyone to see. And hopefully I'm open to any questions. If anybody has any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
I think it looks great. I do have two, I think, small questions. And, well, let me say this. I love how just about every offense, the first offense is parent notification. It's all over this
That's the most
policy.
important piece.
Yeah. Under the engaged section,
I
with
had a hard time trying to find an E.
engaged is a good one. Chronic, second one down, chronic tardiness to school / absenteeism. I just thought, there's no parent involvement there. It's just the warning. Is that warning to parents?
So it goes, so in our handbook, and this has been a long existing policy, when a student's late, every trimester they're allowed 3 tardies before it becomes an issue. And after the, so really is first, second, third offense, and after that, the parents definitely
Okay.
are contacted. You're right, that should be in there. The notification on third offense should definitely
I
be
thought
in
that was just interesting that the parent
Yeah.
involved, notification is everywhere, but it wasn't
there.
there.
That jumps out at you, doesn't, yeah. It definitely happens. It's on there. It's just an oversight. We can add that. This did go through our school council as well. They approved it back in May. Just forgot to mention that, but.
Notice that the I don't think this is, couldn't really hear you very well, Jen, but the use of phone during school, that doesn't say parent notification either. Are you trying to let parents know, like, every time there's a violation, just so if they wonder,
Trying to find out where that is.
oh, sorry.
Under respectful,
Um,
I think?
Yeah, the pages maybe could be numbered. I don't know.
What was that?
The pages maybe could be numbered so that we could,
Yes.
but it will be, I guess,
It
when it
will be
rolls
in the
into the
handbook,
yeah, the
definitely.
handbook. It is,
It's like maybe the first step for all of them should be parent
it's under respectful.
Interesting enough, and this is maybe why this is in here, one of the 2 rules that were in the existing handbook, one of the few rules, 2 of them were the absenteeism, the tardiness, and the phone policy were both in the old, and they talked about that. And for some reason, they're not here, and you're absolutely right.
Oh, okay.
But there are definitely lots of conversations about that. Well, we don't have, it doesn't come up a lot, luckily. Sorry, Sean.
Right now.
What it does, we always call home.
Okay.
Maybe it's just because it's so obvious that we do it all the time, that it was an oversight on our part. But for this gets passed, when it goes to press, we can definitely add those in there, for sure. Because that does happen on,
Yeah. And stealing too. Sorry. It's like everything should be, right?
yeah, everything. Stealing, we haven't had any stealing, so.
I feel like if you're
There's a lot of this was adopted from another school. Yeah, it really should be in everything, go
Okay.
back and add it
Yeah.
to everything, because there really is a great deal of communication.
Yeah.
But a lot of these were, where we really thought about it and added it was when it's a teacher issue, and some of the things don't arise, all those things that were brought up arise to the admin level, and we definitely always communicate home. But we really were looking hard at was the issues that don't come to our level.
Yeah.
With asking the teacher to make sure they comply and
Yeah.
continue. So we definitely can add that. It's a strange one. Those
And-
are not there. But it's just something we do on a daily basis, probably just slipped our mind.
Right.
And under respectful and the same use of phone during school policy, and now I understand why. That was the second part of my comments, was that the third offense says loss of phone privileges for rest of the year, but it sounds like maybe this was taken from another school's policy because in the middle school, they don't have phone privileges.
Right.
Right?
That means, well, sometimes kids will sneak it and have it. And,
Yeah.
So basically that does happen once in a while, and a student will turn it in. We had, I believe, 2 students this year that got to that third offense, and they turn it in the morning. We've met with the parents, we've gone over it with them, the parents are on board, and it gets turned in the morning, and they pick it up in the afternoon from the main office. But like I said, we had 3 people this year. It's not a, most of these issues are not widespread at all. But we thought just for transparency, we wanted to get them codified and into everybody's hands so they can see what's happening.
Yeah, to me, it seems very transparent and will give you and your assistant principal a lot of, a lot to back you up, and, it's written in the you knew what the consequences were, or it's written out, so.
Big piece is
hopefully-
that transparency piece, so everybody knows, go over it in the beginning, in our orientations, in the beginning of the year with students, go over the rules. And also, there's no surprises, and there's no back and forth where students get upset with teachers saying, I can't believe you're making me do that, and it's not the teacher's rule, it's the school's rule, and it just removes that back and forth, that potential back and forth. We don't have a lot of it, but we certainly don't want to have it start, so.
To me, that speaks to equity too, because then you can't have well, you did this for this student, but you did something else for me, and so, it's written out, first offense, second offense, and so if you stick with it, then kids, you're treating kids equitably.
Full disclosure, a lot of this was from my old school. I was on part of that committee that made this.
It's all right.
Don't reinvent the wheel, huh?
My only question was the difference between detention and school detention, but now it looks like
Right,
school
yeah.
detention's 90 minutes.
The teacher detention is a 30-minute run by the teacher itself that had the infraction occur in their classroom and are under their care. For 90 minutes is the school detention that.
Okay. So, this is just me, because this is for parents too, parents might not know, if their child didn't get a lot of detentions, so maybe in the box that says behavior interventions, where it says detention, school detention, it says 90 minutes. So for detention, you could say, 30 minutes with the teacher, so people understand what the difference is between all those different types of detentions. Just define it a little bit more, maybe.
Yeah, at the end, at the last page, it
Yeah, it is the
shows you
last
school
page.
detention, 90 minutes.
Yep.
So it does list that. Where the other one's only 30 minutes.
Yeah, okay.
It's good.
Other questions?
Nope.
Okay.
I move to approve the middle school handbook edits as presented.
With the corrections as,
We'll have the parent notification on those,
so that
in every box,
Sorry.
basically.
And as discussed.
You got that motion, Laura? Yeah. Motion by Diana, second by Jenny. Any further discussion? All in favor? 6-0.
Thank you very
Okay,
much.
thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so moving on to high school handbook review approval. Welcome, Mr. Mitchell.
Evening, everybody. I was kind of proud of Charlie that he spoke up and expressed himself, but just once I want to have a student rep who just agrees with everything I want to do. Second in a row, someone's going to disagree with me. But I think it's a good example. We can like each other and respect each other and just disagree. And I think it's a good reminder that we can still do that despite the nation's current political climate. So I'm at your will here. I can go through in order the changes to the handbook, or I could, if you had a chance to look at it, I can talk about individual changes if you want. Some of them are pretty just basic, like changing dates and names and just little language changes here and there. The big ones obviously are the chemical health policy, which I think we've talked about ad nauseum. The next one is the cell phone ban, and then social probation is
How about we tackle this, do people have questions or comments on sort of the more minor changes that were made throughout?
I have a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah, minor stuff.
Or what?
before we go there, though, it just dawned on me in here, several places you have, I think, on the basis of our legal counsel suggestions, so just
That's a good point. So
address that.
this has been vetted by legal counsel. So Jen King
Jennifer King, yeah.
went through it with a fine-tooth comb, and she had several recommendations. Some were additions of language, some were deletions. So every place where she recommended, I just said yes.
The move.
So is,
I'm sorry, I just wanted to make sure that
That's okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's a good
it's
point.
in
We should
there
mention
a
that.
number of times here.
Mine's very simple. For the bullying and harassment section, I already talked to Laura. I think the link needs to be updated.
We'll take a link from the district website.
Okay. And the wording that it references, that must be a previous version of that policy. So I don't know if you want to just refer to the policy or copy what's in our policy and
Yeah, it's
replace
just
it
going to
with
be
that.
copying whatever the district policy
Okay.
is.
Awesome.
Including a link to the bullying report form.
Okay. Thank you.
This is largely going to be a digital document, so the links will be live so people can access it. Navigate to the places we need to go.
I'm just wondering about the headwear. Are we allowed to wear baseball hats now, or is that?
So baseball hats can be worn with a rim that it can obstruct your eyes.
No, right, I mean just the headwear, change in headwear policy.
So that was, the lawyer actually brought that up, said that deviates from the school committee policy about headwear, but we decided that headwear could include hoods or anything that's going to obstruct the ears, so we can't see if kids are wearing earbuds. But we also want to respect cultural differences, where students might have culturally significant headwear that they want to wear, so we want to have language that would include that.
other questions on sort of the more mundane changes or straightforward changes?
Just to clarify, the social probation, the student would be in school, but they wouldn't be allowed to participate in anything outside of school on the days designated as the social.
So social probation is language that other student handbooks have at other high schools. It's just an alternative to suspension, because the state is really pushing schools to explore alternatives to out-of-school suspension, so that's just one more avenue we can pursue. It's just been a tool in our toolbox that we haven't been able to access.
Kate, is your suggestion to,
Well, I just figured we'd do the easy stuff first and see if there was any discussion on the more straightforward, what seemed to be more straightforward changes, to sort of get those. this- I'm not hearing any, I'm just skimming to make sure I didn't miss anything. What happened to stealing? That's all.
Stealing still there. Page 37. I don't have a copy.
So what do people want to talk about first?
Can we get to both of them?
Cell phone? Well, let's do it. Cell phone.
Jenny has copious notes here. That's why she'd like to go with a cell phone first.
So we're talking about
On all of them.
cell phones, so we did distribute to parents a Google form where they had a chance to reply with any concerns. I printed out, I copied emails I received when we sent out the notification about the change in policy. I also took out responses on the Google form, so I printed out copies if you want to look at them.
And that's been how many days?
Thank you.
So it's overwhelmingly supportive. And I heard the students, both Claire who spoke earlier, Charlie on the student advisory committee, and they did share the opposition to the personal laptop. And I told them I would speak with our IT director, Keith Borgen, and he said there's nothing that prevents students from taking their laptop to our IT department and letting them manage it, And that way they can control where kids go. So that would prevent them from getting to like Netflix or other kind of social media sites. So if students want to bring their own device, I think an acceptable compromise would be they have to have their device managed by our tech department.
Then does that place an undue burden on the tech department if you get 40 laptops potentially?
Potentially, I don't know what it involves,
Yeah.
as far as locking it down.
So I have a question about that. With Macs, it's my understanding that what's happening, and I have, my personal computers are Macs, they use them as texting devices. And it's happening now in classrooms, and they're texting each other and meet me in the hallway, and in addition to shopping, Amazon and things. But the texting is an issue with a Mac, right? And I don't think that can be avoided if there's two people with
Good
personal
question.
devices that
We
each
can't
have
stop them
Macs,
texting or
they're
access
still
to social
texting.
media, then it's a deal breaker. But
Right.
my understanding is if we can manage their devices, that we could probably prevent that, but I'm not sure.
And then to the same point with the Macs, and students have worked hard and maybe even paid for their own personal laptop. Is it out of the question, like as a student, wouldn't they use the Chromebook in school, but could use their personal laptop at home? Because that doesn't change anything, right?
I just can't use it in school.
They just can't use it in school.
Right.
Another question for you. At the point brought up earlier, and, you know, my knee-jerk reaction to all of this was, yes, device ban. And then I thought, in general, that the students that are going to have the toughest time, or the families that are going to have the toughest time with this, are the sophomores, juniors, and seniors of this fall, because the incoming freshmen have lived with this in their Ipswich schools. But to the point earlier about seniors in college, you know, it's the year, like, especially in the fall, there's so many deadlines and confusion, and having just survived that year as a family, is it something like maybe the R block, maybe part of a senior privilege? And I realize that there's criteria to meet a senior privilege, but part of that senior privilege may be to have phone access or personal device access during R block. Is that an option?
So the language changes we propose include seniors who are eligible for senior privilege to have their devices on them. They still have to be out and off or out of sight and invisible or quieted, silenced. They can't have them visibly walking around in the school. If they have senior privilege, nothing stopping them from going out to their car and using their phone. Just like they could leave campus.
But does that include R block?
Yes.
And that's phone or personal device.
Yep.
But you'd have to leave school, you'd have to be in your
Yeah, you'd have to leave school.
car. Yeah.
Is there any wiggle room on that? I mean, to discuss senior privilege, giving access in school during our block,
Because teachers might not know if they see someone walking down the hallway, they might not know if it's a senior under senior privilege or not.
right? Well, maybe it could just be in that, because you have to go somewhere for our block, right? You can't just be wandering around. You have to go somewhere for our block?
With senior privilege, they can pretty much go anywhere they want.
Okay. Yeah, because I mean, I do see that. I do see that point too, and I know this isn't about one student or another student, but I had just had a senior, as you know, and she spent a lot of time. She had a VHS class, and so she spent a lot of time in her VHS period, I believe, because she did that work at night. You can do that, right? Okay. So she had a VHS class and an R block, and she used a lot of that time to plan stuff for prom or fashion show or whatever, school stuff, but not academic stuff. And so to lose that in school time seemed like it could be a real loss for kids that maybe would need to use.
I just feel like anything you can do via text, you can
do on a Chromebook. You could. It just would, it's just going to take some shifting around of kids who don't use email that much these days. They'd have to use email.
Would it be possible for, like, senior privileged kids to use the library R block and use the personal devices in the library. That way you still have to follow like the library rules of like decorum and can't be loud, obnoxious. And Ms. Chain's a pretty good watchdog over
Yeah, I mean,
inappropriate actions.
because there's students in other grades in the library, that just becomes a policing nightmare. This is going to be hard enough to enforce with consistency without adding that added layer of complication.
So I don't have a child in high school, so sort of learning about like what is allowed or how they have access to things. So do students need the internet to access their school, the necessary school information during school? So do you need the internet to access the network, the school network? Yes.
So every student's going to have a Chromebook, so they have access to Chromebooks connect automatically to our network.
To your network? Okay, so they have the internet. Okay, so if,
With some restrictions, obviously, they can't go anywhere they want on the internet.
sure, thank goodness, yeah. Okay, so they need the internet to get to their school information, is what you're saying, okay. Okay,
And there's a misconception out there that students can't email outside of the IPS K-12 domain. They can, that's true in the middle school, but in high school, there's no restriction. They can email whoever they want.
So I just want to touch back to that point about if our school tech department managed personal devices. I feel like that could be a very slippery slope legally with privacy issues. I don't want to open that can of worms. So
Just so you're aware, like our IT director, Keith Morgan, he's super concerned about student privacy. So he would never engage in anything that would jeopardize student information or student privacy. So,
yeah.
we could have another person working at some point, you know, people could switch out.
Right.
Yeah, but you don't mean our administrators doing something inappropriate. You mean parents getting upset that IT has access
In their kid's
to
computer.
their personal devices that they
bring
bought.
a laptop then. That's
Right.
that's a choice they have.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
I feel like, and that's a real world decision that, if you decide that you want to have your work email on your personal phone, which is a convenience to somebody to be able to do a work email on the fly, then your office or corporation is going to require all of the authentication that they would require on the device that they're giving to you. So it's like, that's a real world application of what would be required of anybody if they're wanting to utilize their personal devices. I think that's a lesson that would be important for any student to learn.
In general, I'll just speak up and say I am very supportive of this. I think we need to pay a lot of attention to the fact that this was brought forward from teachers, and an overwhelming majority of teachers. And in their statement, this isn't the first thing they've tried. There's a lot of things they've tried, and it seems to be just getting worse. And so they've tried the little sleeves where you put it in, and then it just becomes a policing and a behavioral issue. And so I do want to respect, I do admire our administrators for bringing this forward so, I don't want to say aggressively, but so forcefully, and sort of in a unified way. So I think we need to take that seriously.
It's not just a peer, it's a trend.
It's a trend, yeah, and the evidence is building, and,
California just banned all phones. Like,
That was Los Angeles.
was it California? It's a bill in the House to ban all phones. Yeah.
So, yeah, things are heading in that direction. I think in general, it seems like we have a lot of support from what I've heard in the community. I too was a little frustrated about the rollout, because I felt like it was just presented as this is what we're doing. And I was surprised when my child came home and said, we heard about it, we talked about it, we had a whole big discussion about it, and this is happening, because we hadn't talked about it yet, let alone voted on it. And I don't think school council had yet either. So I was also concerned about the rollout.
It's been on the agenda at several school council meetings over the last several years. We've, jigsawed articles about cell phone bans. We just decided it was just too much of a hot potato to try to tackle. there was grant money available for different schools in the state for this current school year to try like yonder pouches or other kinds of ways to ban cell phones. So I was kind of waiting to see how that went. Because the phrase I've been using is the juice going to be worth the squeeze on this? Because it's going to be a huge effort for us to police this. And so I was hoping I could get some data back from DESE, from these schools that tried it this year, to see what, I haven't really seen much, but I have seen a lot of research outside of Massachusetts about the danger of cell phones and social media, it's a distraction to kids. So it's obviously a very compelling argument. And I know the students were upset about it, and I said, give me an argument that says when it's good to have cell phones in schools. I'll wait. There's no research out there that says cell phones are good for kids in schools. There's tons of research out there that says it's bad. So why would we not take this step?
I agree. I do agree with that. But like Kate was saying, I reached out to you and I was like, because we barely touched on it when we received from the teachers, the signed paper saying that they're, really would like to have the cell phone ban. And so we chit-chatted a little bit, and then
It
we're like,
wasn't on our agenda.
it's not
I
on
think
our
it was a
agenda. So,
public
yeah, so it was
comment,
just, we barely said anything. And then, yeah, I was surprised when I read about it. So maybe that's something we can revisit. I know it was not a district-wide policy. That's why the school committee does not need to vote on it.
Well,
But
we
I
need
feel
to
like we
vote
should have
to
at
approve
least,
any handbook changes,
even if it's not,
but it's not a district-wide policy.
right.
So it didn't come from us. A district-wide policy would be developed and come from us.
Right.
But a handbook policy comes from the administrators to us.
Right. So we didn't vote on it. We're voting on it now. But I mean, it was sent out to the parents. That's why it was just the order of how it worked. It's confusing.
This may be semantic, but, and I'm new to the game, so is there policy around how policies like this are written in terms of the school site council or the student council having input from those bodies? Is that required? Is that optional? Like, how much autonomy does the administration have? Again, like, not just related to this, but anything where you would be able to just say, this is too much of a hot potato issue, we're just going to bring this forward. I mean, is there policy written in terms of like how that is, what's allowed, or?
So one of the responsibilities of school councils, which are elected bodies, they're open meetings, is reviewing potential language changes to the handbook. So the typical thing that bubbles up from teachers or students, comes to or parents, it comes to school council because as Pete mentioned before, there's parents, kids, and teachers on the school council, plus me. It's not legal for assistant principals to be on school councils, just as a weird side note. So it's, things, that's the traditional path. Now, in terms of whether that school council decides what becomes in the handbook, I typically am a consensus builder in most cases. I try to get the prevailing sentiment of the group before deciding in the direction to go. But there are times where I reserve the right. I think that ed reform gives me as a principal to make policy decisions, to share with the school community. So, and this is one of those cases where it was so important. Obviously, the teachers are our experts. They're the ones, they're boots on the ground, they're in the front lines, whatever kind of euphemism you want to use. They know what's going on in the classroom better than I do. They're living it. And so when we have 55 or so teachers out of 65, and there's some people they probably missed in this petition, saying that we need to have a cell phone ban, that's pretty powerful. I'd like to listen to teachers as the experts. So that's why the typical process of going through school council was kind of bypassed here. There's a sense of urgency, and if you can see it across the country, this is an urgent issue. And we didn't want to wait till next year because it's easier to enforce a new policy at the beginning of a school year rather than get to December and say, all right, everyone's going to have to follow this policy.
Right.
You're better off kind of starting at the beginning and then trying to force it halfway through the school year. That's why it probably has this sense of feeling rushed.
Are you, if this gets approved tonight, are you open to, I mean, I know you're gathering feedback from parents and students, and are you open to an evolution of this over time that might, depending on how it goes?
The handbook is a living document. It's not
Yeah.
ever going to be completely set in stone. It's going to evolve with time and what the needs of the school students are. So this is the policy that we are suggesting we put in place right now, and that we can always revisit it.
In the interest of time, to be able to entertain the idea of devices, meaning laptops, not cell phones, how would that be potentially readdressed or integrated into this?
I'd rather start with a ban of personal devices and then kind of look into what our options would be, rather than take that language out right now.
And talk to IT.
Can I just get clarity on the senior privilege issue with the devices? So, and maybe I'm missing the language, but you said it's in there that senior privilege would allow for cell phones, for not devices.
It's not in the cell phone section, it's in, there's a senior privilege section. I thought it might also go in the cell phone section, so it was,
Or C-note.
because I was driving myself crazy this morning. I was like, I feel like I read it somewhere, but I couldn't find it. And you of course, were like, page 53, and pointed me right to it, so.
So it has to be outside the building, but can be on campus.
You can bring your, you use it.
I mean, if they're eligible for senior privilege, which doesn't start till second quarter, if you remember, they can bring in their phone, it just has to be off
Away.
or away, and then
They can keep
sign
it on their
over.
person
You
unlocked.
can have it on them.
Okay. I just recall, and I wonder, has guidance weighed in on this? Like, you know, I'm waiting for something to be complete in my application to college, and I need to go tell my guidance counselor, and I'm waiting to see if it comes into my personal email for my Common App. Like, those are things that, like, are timely, that would take a personal device and not a Chromebook, I think.
I'm not bad with technology, but correct me if I'm wrong, but I think you can log in often to some other email on another device, can't you?
You can't log into personal emails on a Chromebook.
You can't log into personal
You
emails
can't.
on a Chromebook?
Not
You-
even
you-
else Gmail?
Not even if it's Gmail, and you can't add another account. Like, you know, some devices have like a work account and then like a other account. You can't even do that. So it's just total school.
We could add that for seniors,
Locked
the
in.
access to, I don't know. I think we need to talk
So
to
answer your question though,
IT.
like guidance is on board with this, because the more immediate danger to kids in their well-being is social media and bullying and
Right.
mean chats.
Yeah, I would be open to some allowance of something regarding the college application process. I feel like there are deadlines and things that come at you during the day that,
I hear what you're saying, I just don't know how that's possible. Oh, no, I wasn't on this site, I was on the college app, it's just, how can you?
no, like access to go to guidance and say, I'm waiting for this and I need to check my personal device.
I feel like there's got to be workarounds for that.
Or
that
if we can
talk
even
to.
if we could add a personal email onto the school Chromebooks, I think that would solve a lot of the students' issues. I think what I was told was that communicating with their boss was difficult, finding things about clubs or their planning. Like a lot of people from Interact Club plan events, the Jingle Bell Walk, NHS plans things for community service. I heard a lot of, it's difficult for me to do school-related activities on just a Chromebook if I'm limited to just my school email. So I don't know if it's possible to add, I'm sure it is, to add a,
I mean, so I understand that
Email,
people want to have
yeah.
information like right now, but there's
Right.
information right now that doesn't, you can wait till 2:30. I don't think you necessarily have to know instantaneously whether you got into a school or whether
Yeah,
you're missing
and
something.
that's going to take a bit of a shift in mindset that we have all become accustomed to knowing everything right now. And that's going to be a change for people.
Right. Right.
But I think
Sorry.
it's okay because they're in school and you shouldn't be texting your parents and
Right.
maybe you shouldn't be checking your, I don't know, college portals. But I think it's worth talking to IT about opportunities for
Is there a reason why students aren't using their school email for college applications?
you think you just get cut off when you
Because they
graduate?
disappear after they graduate, so.
They disappear in June though. I mean,
Well, my
everything
kids
that they're
did.
worried about is going to be done by June.
Oh, it doesn't.
Sorry, but there's things that come in after the fact of the summer.
So you can transfer, I mean, in June we give until late June for seniors to sign all their stuff over to their personal Gmail accounts.
I don't think it ends right at when they
It
graduate.
doesn't, it's the end of June, I think.
Is it? Yeah.
Not later.
You're saying you could transfer it to another?
You can like, we give a lot of notice to seniors saying, please transfer all your stuff by this date, and then we even give them a couple weeks. I probably shouldn't say this in a public meeting, but we give them a couple weeks even beyond that deadline to transfer their stuff over.
Right. So then they have the decision. They could either, use their personal email with colleges, and I have not gone through it, except for myself, way before email. Or, and just deal with it after school hours, or they could use their school email and just have to transfer it as school is coming to a close. So,
I'm in favor of this with the caveat that there are some things out there that we just don't know, and I think you know that we don't know how this will all work. But if it is implemented as is, as the year goes on, is there somebody, a group that will be aggregating sort of the feedback, the data, the things that we're learning throughout the year, so that if we do need to revisit this, who's,
Some members here of the cell phone policy.
okay, so that they will be the keepers of the flame? Okay.
how about just in the library? We were talking about the library. If there were some computers that you could log into your personal email address without your personal device, like stationary places in the library that you could go and, I don't know what kind of free time they have, honestly, in high school, but to be able to take some time, head to the library, maybe they reserve a time, I don't know, and take 10 minutes to log in to their personal email. And could that satisfy that?
That's a great idea.
The library, I mean, I've just speaking, I've tried to log in my personal email numerous times, but it says blocked by administrator. It's like there's other schools which assign you a Chromebook, and it says like I don't know if you guys know like the profiles, like we are at the Ipswich Public Library, you have a work device, it says like your work email or like guest profile, and our Chromebook doesn't have it. It's like set to the school. You can't get out of it. There's no way you can log into personal email. I tried to do my personal calendar because I find that very helpful to plan homework assignments, and I couldn't even log in with my email for my personal calendar, for Google Calendar, because I thought that'd be helpful, but it wouldn't even let me do that, and that's why I prefer,
If it's possible, we'll find a way, as long as
Okay.
it doesn't jeopardize our goals or student rights.
Because I think, what Maeve was talked about in student advisory, and a few other student advisory members, was that it's so closed off, it's hard to, kind of manage other things. You can't like manage your calendars. It's like a closed off system. You can't import things from personal email or events and things like that. But if there was a way you could add a separate account or log in on your email, I think that'd be very helpful.
To Matt's point earlier, sorry, Charlie.
Yeah.
Achieved in course. We're going to look at different data points like number of kids failing true more classes, office referrals to school trustee councils over the course of the year to see if we see a positive trend in those. The policies have an impact.
Yeah, good.
All right, so I think we're getting, as we tend to wait, like really in the weeds with all the details. So I want to bring us back to try to sort of move us forward or back to the spirit of the policy, which I think is, at least I'm supportive of. And I think we also, one thing we haven't touched on, which is very important, is student mental health and depression and anxiety and all this stuff that is tied to cell phone use, where the data is really coming pretty fast and furious. So I think that's another important consideration.
I don't think we should let inconveniences and problems have us lose sight of the bigger issue of students' well-being. There's no question that social media and constant addiction to their phones is not helping.
And I think it seems like you're open, to evolutions of this potentially in the future, and talking to IT about ways that we can potentially make some changes, at least maybe for seniors, or, I don't know. I think there's some wiggle room for making some minor changes. But I do want to get out before midnight, and I want to, I know we have a lot more to discuss, so do we have any other comments on, see, my phone's going off. Any other comments on the cell phone policy before we move on to the chemical health? Go ahead.
Just one quick. Back in my day, our day, people would pass notes. You know, you fold them in cool ways, right? And sometimes they're about what you're doing after school, or sometimes there's something that's not very nice. But at least the teacher could see that, could take it, and that would end, you know? And so it's so important, like what you're saying, is that how can we limit the amount of toxic energy and hateful messaging? So I am supportive of this.
You imagine
Yeah.
a situation where we're eating lunch and we're making a really stupid face eating a piece of pizza. Someone surreptitiously takes a picture of that and sends it out to 50 kids.
I agree.
Yeah.
At
With
least.
a comment like, look how ugly she is. That's what's happening.
Yeah. One more thing. One thing I like about this, this is, you know, as a parent, you make a choice of when to get your child a cell phone. And I wish I could write a policy for wait till 8th grade and, you know, make it for everyone. But flip phones everywhere. But we can't. But what I like about this isn't the school trying to be the parent. This is the school doing what's best for the kids academically in school. And I think that that's exactly why we're here.
Okay, should we move on to chemical health? Can we vote? Can we parse this out? I mean, there's a lot of edits to this, so let's just keep going on our conversation and see where it goes.
It's up to the school committee. You can parse it out any way you want. I mean, at the end of the day, we're going to need to vote as a whole on the student handbook changes that were proposed. And if we didn't do that with Peters, then we need to go back and do that.
We didn't vote Peters?
I think that's how we
Vote Peters, right?
read
So
the
we'll need-
motion.
Right, so we'll need to do the same.
The changes
here.
as discussed.
Right.
But we could section out if needed, if the committee saw it necessary to make changes in one edit and not another one.
Okay, we could. Let's move on to the chemical health section of the handbook, which is, starts on page 10. We have talked about this quite a bit already. It's back before us tonight. I'm happy to just start with my thoughts if anybody doesn't mind, of course, yeah.
I was impressed that Pete has such good memory of our conversations. In particular, the one about Manchester Essex, who have just been kicked out of yet another prom venue.
Oh.
Just being out of school. They're not allowed back at Louisville after their senior prom. So keep in mind that our existing chemical health policy is what has shaped our students so far. You can say that maybe it hasn't shaped, but certainly this policy was in place all the way through this year. And nothing but praise for our kids at the different venues. They're great kids. I'm not saying they're not great kids. All I'm saying is that we have to have a policy that prioritizes safety. And I feel like we've come up with language here that prioritizes safety. So I can sleep at night and know that I did the best I could to put a policy out there that's going to protect kids. The school council wanted to change the policy to emphasize education. Check. If you recall, the old policy was in the presence of, the MIA policy was enforced. 25% of your season, first offense, without question. That is no longer the case. Now they have to submit a service learning project that's 4 hours of length. Educational. As in the presence of, which is, so we've weakened our old rule already. So to have qualms about in the presence of, I think is necessary. Because the first offense is education. We hope that someone will learn his or her lesson after the first offense. Manchester, Essex does not have in the presence of, that's true. Do we want to be Manchester, Essex?
Bless you.
Do we want to get kicked out of proms? Two different locations not wanting to have us again? I don't think we can have a policy where we come across as being condoning underage drinking. I just can't.
Illegal.
I think the example you're using, I don't think it's in the presence of students that would have us be kicked out of those venues, right? It wouldn't be the kids that were in the presence of. Because if they were just in the presence of, they wouldn't have been drinking.
But that's the policy that we've had.
Right.
Before I was here.
Right, but I think you were just, as your example was, we don't want to be kicked out of, if we didn't have, if we didn't have this in the presence of, would we be kicked out of, venues? But the kids that are in the presence of category wouldn't have caused any problems with alcohol.
But it sets the tone that we can't tolerate underage drinking as a school.
Right, and they wouldn't be underage drinking.
Well, they'd be at a party where underage drinking is taking place.
Well, I encourage the removal of that section, and I just think it does prohibit the socialization of our kids. If there's, what else is there to do? You want to, hang out, and there could be 10 of you, and then, it doesn't have to be a big party, but a small gathering, and there's still 1 or 2 people. Maybe it's a huge problem. Maybe there's just a couple kids in the corner that are being the problem. And to, even though the first offense is education, right? It's still, then they're nervous to go out, to hang out with their friends. And what are the alternatives for them to do?
In other words, if the prevailing sentiment is to not have booze at a party, kids won't bring booze to the party. They're worried about the consequences.
Right.
No,
And these kids wouldn't be bringing the
consequence, if they're worried about consequences, they're going to not go to the party, which is what happened in the latter half after October. So, yeah, you have weakened the penalty, but so if somebody's in the presence of, and I'll start by saying I went to, I think, the 4th out of 5 or 6 of the school council meetings, and the one that I went to, I heard you say, I want a list. I just want to know who's there, and I want to act on that. I want it to be easy. And what we all went through, especially you, last October, was not easy. But I think when it comes to children, easy is never the answer. As a parent, the more difficult choice is the right choice. And the choice to sit down and have a discussion with your child about going to a party in the presence of alcohol is a hard discussion. But if you have that discussion and they say, okay, I'm not, it's illegal, it's unsafe, it's all that it is. But they say, I'm going to go to the party, I know the penalties, and I'm not going to drink. That was a hard discussion, and they were in the presence of, not by their own doing, but by going to the party. So then they go through their 4 hours of education. And then the next time that there's a party, you have the discussion again. And what happened this past year, and what I believe will happen to families in the future, is they will seek out, well, does that party have a place where we can run? Do I hide the car? I want to go be with my friends. But now if I get caught, there's a penalty just for being there. And I think between you and the Ipswich Police Department, something has to give as far as not everybody who socializes at a party should lose titles and lose, whatever experience they're experiencing because they chose that they wanted to socialize and not isolate, because it did happen this year. And the district brought in that wonderful speaker, the woman who lost her daughter because she ran into the woods after being at a party alone. And that was a wonderful discussion at my dinner table, but that's what's going on. They're afraid of being penalized. And even if it's the first or the second, they're afraid of being penalized. Talking about places to run, which is what we're trying to not do, because they're in the presence of other people doing illegal things. And I'm not naive. I know kids are gonna drink and it is illegal, but I think having it in the presence of is easy. And for all of you with younger children, this is gonna cause problems down the road. This isn't the end of it. And kids have not, I know my kids have not socialized since that party in the way they wanted to. They were scared to death to go to a party. What if there's alcohol? Well, what if we get caught? And just because it's the second offense doesn't make it okay that it's in the presence of.
So I can tell you, I think I said this before, the police, when they've broken up parties, have cut kids, in their words, cut kids a break by not charging them, because they know the school's going to handle it. So if the school doesn't handle it, kids are going to get charged.
Right.
So, okay, that's fine. If you guys, I've spent so much time talking about this. I feel like if you vote to cut this part out, you're condoning underage drinking. I'm not okay with that. And second, the police are going to charge kids, and then it's going to be on their record. Whereas, so if schools aren't going to handle it, the police say, all right, I guess we have to do something about it.
To charge the parents.
So
That's all I have to say. If you have any more questions, I'll answer.
All right, okay, I'm going to mediate the discussion. So I'm going to have Jenny go, and then Charlie go, and then I want to go.
Thank you, Kate.
Thanks.
So you were just saying that the police would charge the kids within the presence of? No, that's not illegal,
They'll charge students with possession.
if they were in possession. So not in the presence of.
So the list of names that I got, all those kids would be charged
By the police?
by the police.
For the presence of?
They were not breathalyzed, they would not have.
Okay,
Is
thank
it-
you.
is
This
it
is not a
illegal to
public
be-
discussion right now.
In the
With
presence of?
possession.
Does anybody know?
It's vague. Charlie?
I mean, just a clarification, I mean, the list you get is from a party the police were called to or saw. I mean, it's not a list of like 3 or 4 kids. It's always a multiple students. It's a long list. It's not like hanging out with a few of your friends, going to the movies is going to get you up caught in underage drinking. I mean, you can still hang out with friends if you don't. I hang out with my friends all the time, and we've never drinking underage, and we do stuff not as a huge group. We don't have 30 plus kids, but we have a dozen kids, and we just don't do that. So it probably doesn't apply to me. I don't know a lot about it, but
It was a long list of kids.
yep.
A lot of kids weren't on the list because they ran. That's a fact.
And I mean, I have heard students saying that when there are parties being discussed and they are planning it, they do always look for escape routes. There's always discussion of how to run away, drivers, just from what I've heard around.
Like I said, the police verbatim said, I thought we were cutting them a break but not charging them. If they want us to charge them, we'll charge them. Hey,
So my thoughts are that this policy is the message we, as an institution, not as parents, I mean, parents might have their own should have their own conversations with their kids around their tables about all kinds of things. But to me, sitting around this table, we're an institution, and it's my opinion that this is a message we should be sending to our students and our families, that we don't condone underage drinking or drug use, regardless of where it takes place. And I think as an institution, we need to take a firm stance on this, otherwise we're condoning it, which I don't think is a place we want to be as a school committee. And so the consequences of the handbook, I don't know. I'm fine with this policy as written. I think it sets out our expectations for students and families, frankly, and lays out the consequences in a progressive way that's less punitive than it used to be. It's more transparent, which is what we were looking for, and it sends a strong message of our expectations of our students, which is that they should not be underage drinking or using drugs, period. That's my take.
And it's a lot more clear for students, too. I think that this policy is much more understandable for students. You know, okay, I really shouldn't have been at the party, but my punishment's only a 4-hour education talk. Next time I hang out with my friends, I'll make sure it's nothing like that. I think it makes it easier for students to understand where it's coming from, rather than, the first punishment you get is like a loss of all the titles, because that heavily affected students. So I think this policy is a lot easier on the students, but also sends a very clear message, not allowing underage drinking.
I agree with the underage drinking section and the consequences to that. And, again, in the presence of, they're not underage drinking. They're just in the presence of. So it's not like we're saying it's okay to drink underage. We're saying, like, if you're not drinking underage, you shouldn't be in trouble. And I guess I have a question of, if you choose to answer, the 4 hours of education for the first offense of in the presence of, what are they learning?
The topic would be the dangers of underage drinking.
Which they weren't, right?
Oh.
Is that something, like, we got a letter from a parent that suggested, well, maybe you do that. We've had 2 years in a row with a Halloween weekend party. Maybe that education happens in October.
It really should be a message that all the coaches convey to their student athletes, all the club advisors to all the kids who participate in the clubs. It's going to be a point of emphasis for me when I meet with all the classes.
One thing that I want to say that I do not condone underage drinking, and just because I want in the presence of not part of this policy doesn't mean that I condone underage drinking. I do think that conversely, what I commented on with the cell phone and personal device policy is that the school was being the school and not the parent. And in this one, where the school is being the parent. It's saying, no, you're not allowed to be at Johnny's house down the street without school consequences, even though it's Saturday night and you had a conversation with your parents and your parents said, okay, I trust you to go to Johnny's house and not drink. So the school is now becoming the parent to the child. And I don't think that's good school policy.
There's precedent for it. So as you mentioned, whenever there's a situation where student safety is policy, or the insurance schools allow reasons. Second, this does not affect kids' right to education. It's extracurricular activities, which are not a right, they're a privilege. So there's another reason why courts have given schools are, and loco parentis. We are their parents in school.
It's not school. But you had mentioned the MIAA chemical policy and how before, when they talked about in the presence of, and then how Ipswich, with this policy, has softened it in the presence of, right? But now they don't have it at all, the MIAA. It's in the Chemical Health Rules 62.1. It says this MIA statewide minimum standard is not intended to render guilt by association, as many student athletes might be present at a party where only a few violate this standard. So,
MIA stepped away from it in the presence of.
Right.
But they still allow schools to make stricter.
Sure,
restrictions.
sure.
Just keep making them less strict.
Right. Yep, I agree. Yep.
So if I might make a suggestion, oh, go ahead, Dana, and
Just
then I'm going to make a
informational question
suggestion.
About, I know everybody knows this year, but typically annually, about how many reports are you receiving? Is it like every weekend or is it once a year?
Typically once a year.
Okay.
The last 2 years, last 2 out of 4 years.
Mhm.
Or 3 out of 4 years. It's been. So there's 1 year where we didn't have.
As the only report you've received, that year, right? Was, yeah.
I've never
One
received
per year.
One report.
3 reports in 4 years.
Right.
Yeah, okay.
Can I give an opinion, or do you want to?
Of course you can give an opinion.
I know you're trying to wrap
Yeah.
it. I'll just say, I had a lot of reservations about this policy, the way it was written, or as it presents today, and I don't think not including the section condones underage drinking. I don't think anybody does that. However, I think I'm understanding how this would be applied more now. I really appreciate your perspective, Charlie. And I think that it does set a good tone for the district. And like everything, like we've talked about, a handbook is a living document. And, you know, it's always an ongoing discussion.
There are people in the school council who are mad that we made it less.
All right, so I have a suggestion. How about we pull out temporarily the pieces on cell phones and chemical health and vote on the rest of the handbook changes? And then we can maybe vote on those separately?
Yeah, sounds good.
Does that sounds fair? So I guess we would have a motion to approve the Ipswich High School handbook changes minus the sections on chemical health rule and cell phones for the 2024-2025 student parent handbook. I think that was the motion.
So moved.
Second.
So moved by Matt, second by Jen. Further discussion on the rest of the handbook changes? All in favor? Okay, so 6-0, so then we will move on to, let's do cell phones, because we talked about that one first. So we'll just be voting on this section of the policy, which is, I lost it, page 9 and 10. I think there's some acknowledgement that there's some, overall, there's some links that need to be added and page numbers that need to be added, but in general, it's more the spirit of the section with only minor administrative changes.
Spend the time putting page numbers in.
Yeah, yeah.
before the language is approved. 'Cause
Yeah,
obviously
that makes
there's
sense.
chunks that will be taken out, so I'd have to like go back and renumber.
Yeah, yeah, that makes sense.
I move to support the cell phone and personal device section of the high school handbook as presented.
Second.
Okay, so motion by Diana, second by Jenny. Any further discussion? All in favor? Okay, 6-0 in support of that. So moving on to the chemical health rule section.
I move to support the chemical health rule section updates as presented in the high school handbook.
Second.
Okay, Motion by Diana, second by Haley. Further discussion on that?
I have I don't know if this is possible, but is this something that we could, I know that the handbook has to be printed by a certain time. Is it possible for, if there's an opportunity for further discussion, or however we could change it, or whatever the vote is, to have the handbook printed and then leave, you guys are in publishing, right? And leave a couple pages blank, and then have, have the policy once it's finalized, if it's not finalized now, to then adhere it to those pages, so it doesn't hold up the handbook, if we're able to have further discussion and make adjustments.
So I'm not sure, because I know the students and parents sign off on the handbook at the beginning of the school year. So it gets circulated, and you sort of have to, check a box, I believe students and parents, that they've received it, read it. I don't know if you probably don't have to agree with it, but you have to say that you got it and received it. So if we made change, so I don't know how that works now that it's an electronic document.
So stick it out before we send it.
We haven't printed actual copies for a couple of years now, because we found the students
Oh.
we were using.
Yeah.
So it's largely a digital document, so it's.
Oh, okay.
But if you get edits during, aren't you kind of signing off on what you theoretically read in September when you got that? So I don't know how that works for changes that are made mid-year, because you kind of signed off on something different that now might be. And I also think we've discussed this for probably 3 hours so far, and I know school council's discussed it for probably 10 hours. So that's my opinion, but I also don't think, I think things can evolve, maybe year to year, and certainly year to year. That's my opinion on it.
I have a procedural question, if, just so that I understand the full consequences of the up or down vote on this. If it were voted down, does the policy revert back to the old draconian policy that we were so excited to get rid of?
Would, because that's
It
what's in
would.
existence.
Yeah, then you might have to bring that, you might have to bring,
It's not in the student handbook, it's in the
okay.
So there's no written,
Not in the student
It's in the-
handbook.
It's in the athletic handbook.
which refers to the MIAA.
So athletes also have to sign off on an athlete
Okay.
handbook when they register for sports. There's also a student athlete handbook that needs to be signed off that contains the old language.
Whatever's in that athletic handbook, which applies to athletes, it wouldn't apply to any other clubs or any other students, like this proposed policy.
Which I think has been a nice, thoughtful addition to make it apply to all students.
I do agree with that part, but,
So now, will this supersede the athletic?
This will be in the athletic handbook, I believe. We
Could be
discussed last
inserted
time.
into.
So we have a motion on the table and a second, I believe, to approve this. Do we have any other discussion before we take a vote? Okay. All in favor? Opposed? Okay, so 3-3, so the motion fails. Okay. So the motion fails because we're not a full committee currently, so we have 6 people, which is an even number. So the handbook has been approved minus the chemical health rule, so we go back to, or we just have to wait to bring something else up again in the fall? Which could be the old policy, or we just keep talking about this for longer?
So,
Yep.
can I ask a question? So the current chemical health policy is just in the athletic handbook.
Right.
So it's not in the student handbook. So the current, because this one just failed, so it now only applies to athletes? Is that what the current school policy is, or?
I believe that's an accurate statement.
Okay. So if you were at a party and you were associating with people who were drinking underage, and you were not an athlete, and your name was on a list, you would not be need for any punishment from the school or from anything else. Am I understanding that right? Okay.
So, yeah.
Yeah. And I think that was the, the decision of the, the creator of the policy is that it was so significant to the creator to have in the presence of, so important that unfortunately it changed the actual underage drinking. It eliminated the underage drinking policy, the new one, because, it was so fixed on keeping in the presence of in there, instead of just being able to remove that and keeping the most important part, which is the underage drinking issues.
Again, we'll have to revert to what we used to do, which was enforce it as written.
Yeah, right,
Which is going to be
right,
in the presence of.
right.
Which is what people just had a problem with.
Right.
But athletes. So the school council spent
Yeah,
probably 12 hours on this policy.
Right.
yeah, so,
Which is unfortunate that,
More
right,
universal.
it is
Try to make
unfortunate,
A
yeah.
more sensible consequence for the first offense.
Well, it changes the message that the police need to be aware of as well. That parents need to be charged, first and foremost. And secondly, kids are going to need to be held accountable, unfortunately, instead of
whether or
giving
not
breaks.
they were,
Right, whether or not they were there, right.
Could it be, so I think there's the old saying, you don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. Like there's a lot of good changes that I acknowledge in the way the policy was written, and my issue was in the presence of, and I believe that other committee members felt the same way. We want to protect kids, we want to protect all kids, not just athletes, with this policy and promote the education of underage drinking, but could it be that if I had just made the motion to take that out, could we vote on it again so that the 90% of this new policy ends up in your handbook?
Sounds like it would fail because it sounds like you'd be like split 3-3 again. I mean, I'm here. I need to put this in my rearview mirror. I don't want to spend
Yeah.
another year on this policy. So
Yeah.
either accept it as it is, change it, or reject it. That's up to you guys. I'll do it. I'm the principal. Tell me what to do, I'll do it.
Can it be
If the
re-voted
presence
on?
of was removed, I would vote for it. But it's just, that it's so important to some, which I appreciate, that in the presence of stays in there, removes the new underage drinking policy, which was really the meat of this policy, just to keep the underage, in the presence of part in there. So I find that unfortunate,
Can it be re-voted on, or is that not, I don't know, like part of it, maybe just applying to all students, or?
Can I make
There can be a motion to reconsider.
Can I make a motion? I'll make a motion to reconsider the chemical health policy without,
No, it would have to be separate motions. You would have to make a motion
To
to
reconsider, and
reconsider
we'd have to agree
the
to
previous
reconsider.
vote, and the majority of the committee would have to approve that as one motion and vote, and then it would be re-voted on. Then you would make another motion with whatever change you wanted to make.
so would you like to make a motion to reconsider the chemical health policy, part of the student handbook?
motion to reconsider the chemical health policy.
second.
Okay, all in favor of reconsidering this section? 6-0. What would you like to reconsider?
Hold on, I'm trying to get to the page. What,
10.
I scrolled down. Thank you.
I closed it. So I don't know.
On page 10. In the paragraph, I'm going to talk about it before I make a motion. Policy verified in the presence of...
Police verified, I'm sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry, police verified in the presence of underage drinking or drug use. And underlined in that paragraph, in the presence of underage drinking or drug use.
And the offenses to it.
I'm sorry, what did you say?
Sorry. And the first and second offense, all that connected, removed, right?
What are we suggesting? I'm not following, sorry. I got page 10, and then I kind of lost you.
Sorry, can you guys speak up a little bit?
Yeah,
It's really
so we're
hard to hear you.
reconsidering, and we're looking at page 10, but I'm just not sure what's the discussion?
I think, and Jen, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think what we're looking to do is to, where everything would come out from police verified all the way through the end of page 10. I think that's what you're suggesting. I don't agree with it, but I think that's what you're suggesting, if I understand it correctly. So essentially, you can be at a party where there's underage drinking, but if the police haven't verified that you were there, there's no consequence. So in the next page, you could only get in trouble if you were charged or summoned
You are in
Correct.
possession.
or in possession.
So my issue is that it's just one list that gets handed to the school regardless of, the only verification by the police is that you're there, not that you were drinking. And I don't know how to do that in a policy, to have the police say verified. And that's what, the point I was making, that it's the harder choice, that the police have to verify that you were drinking or using drugs. So how do I do that? I agree with first offense and second offenses, but not for the kid that was there and not practicing drinking or using drugs.
I don't
can't
think
make
that removing that minimizes, though, the concern of kids running away, which was one of the things that's been highlighted a few times, because if you know that if the police catch you and breathalyze you, you're still going to run away.
Well, the current policy would also promote kids to run, even before this, like throughout my high school. I'm going to be a senior next year, this upcoming school year. Entire high school, since my freshman year, I've heard about parties. Part of where you have the party, oh, who's going to have it? Jake, Greg, whatever. It's, well, how do we run away? How do we run away if the police come? Whatever. So I think that will always be a part of whatever policy it is. But in this case, only athletes would be, because right now it only applies to athletes. And so that's the thing that I think is unfair to a lot of other students. Just purely equity, equality. You can't subjugate just one group of students. It's just not, I mean, it's not fair. Like, just blanket, not fair.
Well, that's why I think we all want to approve something and to not have it go back. But it's the holding it back for the kids who are not drinking is why we're
Right.
is why we're not able to approve the underage drinking policy for those who were drinking. So it's the kids that were not drinking, which is holding back, that part of it. The kids who were not drinking, which is holding back the approval of the new policy for those who were drinking. So
Right.
that,
I personally think it'd be amazing if the police could breathalyze the students and just say, like, were you drinking, were you not drinking? And maybe your name gets put on a list and you say, I wasn't drinking, officer, and if they could breathalyze you and they could prove that, you take your name off the list. But I don't know,
that's great.
can the school committee even,
No.
No.
nothing to do with that,
No,
right?
we can't make decisions about
Right.
what the police does.
But
what the
Dr.
police
Blake,
do.
wasn't that a conversation you had with the chief? We have this memorandum of understanding of what the police do for students at a party?
Police tell us, not what the police do.
tell us, yeah.
police do whatever
I
they
can't
want.
tell the police what to do.
And what did they say about breathalyzing? Like, we can breathalyze randomly at the prom, but in a
They-
in a personal residence,
And I think they would rather not have to breathalyze 40 people and write reports on 40
they want
kids.
hard.
Just
I
for
mean, that way
just
the-
for our
Is different from ours. Ours just says whether they're drinking or not. Theirs actually will give them a number of what their blood alcohol is. So theirs is a much more involved process.
Just for our committee, I will not discuss this past 9:30. We have a lot of things to talk about, so that's my cutoff, and
Unfortunately,
we're moving
not gonna
on.
resolve it.
I mean, unless someone has a motion or something to wrap this up, because we have a lot more things to discuss, and we're getting
have
way
a-
in the
worry that we're
weeds,
gutting the
as
policy.
usual.
I have a motion, and Jen, I believe this is what you were thinking too, so hopefully this covers what you were thinking. I motion to approve the chemical health rule in the handbook without the section of police verified in the presence of underage drinking or drug use in that section in its entirety. I don't know I don't know how to vocalize
All the way
where that
down-
ends.
All the way down to the end of page 10.
End of page 10, but I know these pages are going to be changed, so that's why. The explanation, the police verified, I'm sorry, Laura, I'm like.
I honestly have no idea what.
What about just,
I don't
Jenny,
know how
what
to
about
record
that just that first sentence, so that it's not gutted? Police verified in the presence of underage drinking or drug use. And then the next sentence, an Ipswich High School student who is substantiated by law enforcement to have been in the presence of, just take out the underlined.
But that's the definition of, I mean, you can't,
But-
you have to take it all out, or that's the definition of.
Okay.
Because then how would the school
Should
verify?
I fix my motion, since I halfway said it?
I don't really know what the motion was.
Okay.
To be honest.
No, it's hard, as it was
I'm
coming
so-
out, I'm like,
no, I
this
totally
doesn't
know, I
sound
just
right.
don't know how to record
Yeah,
it.
okay.
Given, if I could interrupt for one second, given that this is policy, should we not take the time to make sure that the words that we choose are the right words? I mean, I'd love to get this resolved tonight. I respectfully disagree that the in the presence of makes kids safer. That is my difference from other people in this room. My life as an educator leads me down that road. I care about kids. They are my North Star. I just don't think in the presence of actually makes them safer. I would like to see, and I love what this policy did in terms of trying to rework consequences to more better jive with what the whole building has been doing, and I think it's important we get that right. I just don't know if we can do that tonight, with due respect, Jenny. I don't mean
No,
to
that's-
step on your toes
That's
there. but-
fine.
So then how do we move on? We send it back to school council? I mean, this is,
I mean, I could be speaking out of turn, but I do believe that those of us who voted against this, our sticking point is that phrase. And that we could get behind something if that phrase were not present. Now, I know that's not what Principal Mitchell wants, and I'm very uncomfortable going against his wishes. But at the same time, if it's coming before us and we're being asked our opinion, I just don't fundamentally think this makes kids safer, and that's why I voted against it.
are you suggesting whoever highlighted that section red? Okay, yeah, so someone highlighted the section red, that I believe we're talking about.
Yes.
Seems like
Yep.
that's what some of us have been proposing.
Yes. So I guess, can we say if it did come up to vote, would people?
I've already made my statement, my position.
You could suggest deleting the section starting with police verified in the presence of through the end of current page 10, if that's what you're,
Yeah.
would like to,
Okay. Should I say that?
if that's
Okay.
what you would like.
I motion to accept the chemical health rule in the high school handbook with the section police verified in the presence of underage drinking or drug use through the end of the current page 10 removed.
Second.
Okay, Motion by Jenny, second by Jen. All in favor of deleting this section? Okay, all opposed?
Oh,
What?
Fails.
I guess procedurally, sorry, I don't, like, is it better to get something in tonight? You know, that's where I just want to understand if we don't, if
It is,
if we
but
vote against
we
this.
just voted, the vote just failed again, 3-3, so here we are.
Well,
Yeah,
I mean, it's 9:20. This was like 12 hours of work. Could we just vote to put the other stuff that was,
we already did, so we've
Yeah.
approved,
Okay.
we've approved the rest of the handbook changes, including the cell phone policy. This is the only chemical health the chemical health rule is the only thing in the handbook we have not approved. I just worry about next steps, because this came from school council after many, many meetings and hours of discussion. We've discussed it now for 3+ hours. A vote has failed twice, so I'm wrestling with the next steps to get something passed that's better than what we had. And I'm
I don't think we have that answered right now,
No, we don't.
right, so we just
unfortunately.
move on.
Two of the things that have prompted the change were we wanted things to be more black and white, so the students knew what the expectations were up front. That was one of the biggest complaints that we had up there. Second one was we wanted to apply to everybody. That's what the policy does now. The third thing was we wanted to be education. So we took the teeth out of the first offense, as being in the presence of, and put that language in there. So I feel like we satisfied a lot of the complaints from the parents who bombarded me with emails and phone calls for that at the department. I'm confident with keeping it the way I proposed it, because not once have we gotten 2 police reports. It's happened 3 out of the last 4 years. We've gotten 1 police report. It just so happened this year there are 28 names on it, so that was unusual. But
And the
there was-
people involved,
Right,
let's face it.
right. And it was obviously thorny.
could it be reworded to first and second offense, and then offenses thereafter? To give, I don't know, more flexibility with students? I don't, just so it's not as harsh on the second punishment or second instance?
It's not the offense, it's in the presence of.
Right.
The consequence.
Well, I mean, the first offense isn't a bad punishment. I mean, it's really just,
I would even argue, Charlie, too, that if students knew that the first offense was only a service learning project, they'd be less inclined to run into the woods.
I agree. I think if it was 4 hours, it'd be like, okay, you're right, I got caught at this party, I'll be way more careful next time.
Whether
mean-
they're drunk or not.
Right. But I mean, I think that's I don't know. I felt like that'd be the worst middle ground if you make it so it's not as immediate first offense and then second offense is serious punishments. If you do a third offense is more serious and the second one isn't as serious, or,
Like I said, we
know.
satisfied the central problems that parents brought to us. This was talked about with a lot of different voices. We didn't always agree, and in the end, I think I had a little bit of a consensus about the language. Obviously, there were some dissenters, but I think in the end, the school council brought this language forward, confident that it was the best thing we could come up with.
So given this stalemate before us, clearly you have a stance where you want this to exist, but I think as Diana highlighted, it's an all, like, it's either this is removed and the rest is included and we can move forward, or,
If the portion is removed, it takes away the educational component, because it goes right to the punishment. Now, it's likely that students probably wouldn't be charged, but there's no guarantee, they could be charged. They could be charged with possession or being under the influence. It's possible, unlikely, but it's possible. And also, that's the policy that most of the other Cape Ann League schools have, honestly. If the students are charged, or if they're in possession, charged by the police for being in possession, that's when the chemical health rule will apply. So we could take the language out, we'd be just like everybody else. There's some safety in numbers, I guess, we could say. say that, yeah, we're not doing anything that's unusual. But I just want to remind you that, our students have been praised for their behavior at these events, and other places that we kind of aspire to be, I'll name Manchester, Essex again, have been kicked out of 2 different locations. So I can live with it without in presence of, if that's what it takes, because it still satisfies the other things. It's going to be black and white, and it's going to universally apply to every kid. So that's 2 out of 3 takeaways. I can live with that, and I can live with the fact that I did my best to do what I thought was best for kids.
So 5 minutes before I cut this off, or I could cut it off 4 minutes. So we could drop it and move on and then just talk about next steps offline. Has anyone's, if we make another motion to reconsider, I don't know what would change, or if anyone has any other thoughts now that we've sort of been through a couple of iterations of this, and do the parts that people agree with, is it worth getting those passed tonight? And would anyone's mind change,
That's what
I
I
guess
was
is the
trying to
question.
ask. Is it better to do some, if not all?
Right, well, I think that's what we just tried to do.
Does anybody's vote, perhaps, is anybody's vote influenced by what Mr. Mitchell just shared, that you can live with that first piece? I agree. I think you did the best you could in order to protect our kids and to send a very clear message, and I appreciate that.
I mean, my vote might change. It's not what I want necessarily, but I think the things that have been changed in here are important and worth having in the student handbook. So if that's the best way to move forward temporarily, I could support that moving forward. I agree. To get something passed tonight that's better than reverting back to our old policy, which only affects athletes and is
And it's
much more
unclear.
punitive
It's
and is
unclear,
vague.
too.
So I will entertain a motion to reconsider the chemical health rule in the Ipswich High School Student Handbook. If anybody wants to make a motion.
Second.
Oh, I made a motion.
This is minus the,
Well, I'm just making a motion to
Minus
reconsider
everything.
this
Well,
for
right
a
now it's
third
just
time.
the motion to reconsider the failed.
okay, just the gotcha.
Second. So motion by Kate, second by Haley. All in favor of reconsidering this section again? Okay, I'm not making a motion, but
So motion to approve the chemical health policy, removing the section beginning with police verified in the presence of underage drinking, continuing down to the end, the bottom of page 10, ending in under the influence of drugs and alcohol.
so motion by Haley, second by Jenny. No further discussion. All in favor? Opposed? Okay, 6-0, motion carries. So the chemical health rule policy is approved minus the section in the presence of. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
for
Thank
this
you, and
work
sorry
also
for that
for,
grinding
a lot of work on
process.
this.
It was a long year.
Yeah.
It's a long year. Tri-board planning discussion. So we have a tri-board scheduled for August 6th. The 2 big topics of discussion are the Noresco project, and I think the agenda isn't set yet, but I believe we will have a pretty substantial discussion on next steps for the public safety building, which may or may not, but more likely will tie into the elementary building project. So we just want to have a little bit of discussion in preparation of that meeting. We will have a retreat before August 6th, but I don't, is he leaving? No, okay, just taking a break. I was going to say bye. I don't believe Noresco will be on our summer agenda planning, at least in my mind, so we'll get to that later. But so I just wanted to have a brief discussion on Noresco, just so we have chance to discuss it a little bit as a committee. As a reminder, this is a company that the town hired to do like an investment grade audit of all of the town's buildings or assets. So schools, town hall, other buildings and things. And so I looked on the Noresco website, and so their mission, just so we all know, is to help clients adapt to and mitigate the impacts of climate change by decarbonizing, modernizing, and electrifying aging infrastructure to be more sustainable and resilient. So they do these sort of investment-grade audits and then help towns sort of strategize how to make some changes to their assets to mitigate climate change and promote decarbonization. Probably butchered that, but that's my interpretation of it anyways. So I believe the plan is hopefully to have an Noresco project come before town meeting in the fall. And it's important to talk about it at the tri-board because it's, you know, it's all kinds of things are on the Noresco proposal, like electrification of the middle school, high school, or, yeah, solar
panels.
solar port, solar canopies in the middle school, high school parking lot, possibly, as well as other things in town. And obviously, these things cost money, but some of the things will actually be paid for. The debt service will be paid for by the energy cost savings of the project. So we'll talk about this at the tri-board. An updated proposal from Noresco, a sort of final draft proposal, is due actually this week, so it will be posted on the town website. There's nothing posted anywhere right now, so it's really hard to find information about this unless you go to meetings. But the draft should be posted on the town website and circulated to all stakeholders, including us, so we should expect that in the next week or so. And I think it's important for the tri-board to discuss it because we need to think about it in context of all the other things the town needs to spend money on, which is sort of what the strategic planning committee is trying to wrap our heads around. So sort of cost effectiveness and long-term planning wise. So I just kind of want to throw it out there if people feel like they have questions about Noresco, or I just want to make sure it's sort of on our radar to that, you know, we know what it is and ready to talk about it at the tri-board. We'll get that document circulated. They're dense. I mean, it's a lot of information, but they basically whittle it down to, you know, a good, better, or best sort of options for the town to adopt. And so, obviously, the good option is, it's like at the car wash, like the cheaper one. There's the better, and then the best. Then they get more expensive, but they get better. So, you know, I don't know. I just want to talk about it and see if anyone had questions about Noresco.
I have so much to learn.
We're all so tired.
Like, I have to dive into that because I don't have any questions because I don't really know enough to have questions.
Okay. So we'll learn a lot. I mean, I believe the plan is to have someone from Noresco at the tri-board that will give us information. So I guess maybe just stay tuned for that draft document. I hope when they send the document, there'll be the ability to send questions to someone that we could hopefully get answered ahead of the tri-board.
The big project for this, that they're looking at for the school district is the solar array carport, which would be placed over the high school side of the parking lot. That's something that they're pricing out and looking at the.
Well, that's not a,
That was big money too, wasn't it?
That's not huge, but I mean, the middle school, high school electrification project is a massive project. That's, I don't think it's in the good plan, it's in the better and the best plans. And it's expensive. But discussions will come up about, you know, there's some definite feelings among people in town about which buildings in town are worth investing in and which aren't. And, you know, I think the general consensus seems to be this building is worth investing in, and the town hall.
And there's, to your point, there's significant costs that are involved and then having to weigh out the recuperation on how many years it's going to take to recoup what you've invested in the project. So there's a lot of discussions going on.
Just to be clear, this isn't like school budget money for
No,
these projects.
this
This
is
is town stuff. These are projects that would be, bonded and approved at town meeting, but could really benefit our building, this building in particular, in the long term. The electrification project would facilitate air conditioning throughout the whole building, which I know is an issue. Much more so in the classrooms, I'm sure. But, so, it does really apply to us and to our students.
It does,
And
and cost for the Ipswich residents, because,
Yeah.
do we want to go with the best? And then that's so much money, and then we come back with like, well, please vote on a new school. So you have to sort of weigh out,
Right.
because it all,
Yeah.
it's only so many people it comes out of their pockets.
Yeah, and so I think the tri-board will probably, be trying to focus on which one should we bring, because town meeting won't have all those options.
Right.
We'll bring one,
Right.
or one will be brought hopefully to town meeting, and so that tri-board discussion will be, which one do we want, or could we cherry pick a couple things from, could we make our own
Sure.
better out of certain projects? I'm not sure, but. Okay. So the next thing that we'll talk about at the tri-board is the public safety building. Obviously that zoning issue failed at town meeting, so they're sort of starting to have conversations about their next steps. And I just wanted to pass along to this committee, there has been some discussion at other public meetings about this idea of carving out some of Winthrop's existing acreage. So Winthrop, as we know, is on I believe, 6.8 acre property, including the current fire station. There has been some discussion around carving out some of Winthrop's current property for a potential public safety building. Some folks in other meetings have stated they feel there's 2 surplus acres on the Winthrop property, and have proposed investigating a public safety building while Winthrop is in session. So I wanted to, this isn't anything anyone's voting on, it's just been brought up at some other meetings, so I wanted to see what this committee thought about that.
I'm skeptical. I'm skeptical that there is 2 acres that could be, I don't know that for sure, to be honest with you, but I feel like that's a tight space already. And this is the first I've heard that. I've sort of heard that once the 2 schools, are consolidated to one, then use the Winthrop. And my argument with that was that that's an unknown timeline. That could be years, in worst case scenario, a decade out potentially, and I worry about hooking ourselves to that wagon with an unknown outcome, especially when I feel like the town has been fairly supportive of this project up until now, and I don't know if this is just the support has been lost, or if it's just there's a very vocal group out there who makes it feel like support has been lost. I can't seem to gauge that very well, but it seems to have passed at most of the town meetings fairly
Yeah.
robustly.
Jenny, did you have something?
Yeah, so, and my thought is, why do we need and this is probably going back like too many steps, but I guess a question for me is, why do we need like a full, fire and the police in one building? And instead of having smaller spaces, new facilities, but not have necessarily the fire and the police station all together. And, the police, they have like, the police have sort of satellite offices, if you will, because they have their cruisers out, or the ambulance has their, but the fire department, I feel like pretty strongly the fire department needs more than one starting point, because, you know, Ipswich is such a huge location that getting from, you know, I don't know, the center of town to Outer Linebrook, or, you know, where there is a fire station there, it's just not manned, or there used to be at Outer Linebrook. But anyway, I feel like, why does it need to be one giant building and not separate ones?
So,
So I don't think that's our discussion, our decision to weigh in on, and public
Well,
safety
if we're
building.
gonna
Yeah.
discuss it at
Yeah.
the,
so there was a feasibility study done.
Okay.
And the select board approved studying one building based on the feasibility of having one at the Neck, having one at Linebrook. But I think the question tonight is, we're being asked our opinion if we, the school committee, would give up 2 acres at Winthrop.
I know, no one's asked us. I think it's just.
Or what our thoughts
Right,
are.
what our
There's
thoughts are.
people talking about that in the community, and I wanted to bring it to us because my opinion is we use all of Winthrop.
And
You know,
could
parking
use
lot might
more.
not be full 24/7, but it's pretty darn full during the school day. We use the lawn for all
PE
kinds of PE classes
fall and
every day.
spring, and even during the winter, if
Events,
we can.
and the soap. I drove through there the other day, thinking like maybe there's little nooks and crannies that I forgot about, but, so my opinion is, no.
I think it seems weird.
You don't have to
If
reserve
they- if
those
they want a
acres.
central location with a lot of acreage that's not being as used, I feel like the town hall has a lot more land that
I don't
isn't
think you
as
could
actively
have it
used.
there, because it needs to be, and I'm not on the public safety.
Right. It just seems weird to like
building.
upend a
It needs to
school
be-
rather than,
Yeah, well, I mean, that's a
Right.
valid point. There's also a functioning school there that's not going anywhere
yeah, like it
anytime
seems like
soon,
a
so
weird idea.
It's a shoehorn in a shoehorn.
Yeah.
Well, it's preemptive if they're making an assumption that that school is not going to be there, right?
Right.
Like
Well,
that's-
or they might be okay to do it with a school there if they think or they could use the existing fire lot and then 2+ surplus acres. So I guess I was curious on our opinion of potentially,
Sharing the lot.
right.
I went to Winthrop and
That's
I
the-
do
the
not
3
know
now.
where there would be 2 acres of land that would not disrupt student learning.
Right.
And there's a school there. I don't think that's a good idea.
Okay, so just,
No.
I agree. So I don't, so perhaps, I think it's a good, so it's something we need to vote on. I just think it's, we need to make our position known that I feel pretty strongly that we're using all of the property and, pursuing a public safety building while a school is in session on a tight site is not an option. So, and to Matt's point, down the road, in an unspecified timeline, if we get to that point where that lot is vacated at some point, that is a discussion we will need to have, because it is in our authority to potentially give up that site if and when the time came. But I agree to hang our hat on it now seems premature. So, and of note, at the tri-board, the Public Safety Building Committee has been invited, and I believe the whole committee, as well as Rick Mitchell, who's the climate resiliency manager, or climate resiliency manager, who has a lot of insight into NORESCO. So it's a tri-board plus some other folks to have those conversations. So any other questions on that tri-board discussion? Okay, so I want to have a little talk about summer retreat planning. We do have a summer retreat planned. I need to reach out to, did we like the venue last year at Turner Hill? We did, right? Okay.
The dessert, I think, won over a lot of people.
How do I not remember the dessert?
And I had it. You guys were jealous.
Oh, okay, well.
Yeah,
Always get dessert.
Okay, well, don't get too excited, but I will reach out to Turner Hill to see if they are available on July 22nd. So that is a 3-hour tour, 3-hour party, fun, not
The
fun
assessment
at
of
all.
it's an
3-hour
apt.
meeting, according, open meeting law meeting, at an off-site location. Typically, we delve into 3 or 4 topics in a little bit more detail than we have time, usually at a public meeting. So I wanted to do a quick brainstorming about topics we could talk about at that meeting. I have a couple that I know have been percolating this year. First of which is the FEFI policy, including reporting on grants awarded and successes, which I know is what Mr. Pulsifer was here talking to us about. But I really want to make some headway on talking about the FEFI policy. And you had a
Yeah,
an
that would
idea.
really help us too. I think, just trying to get the ball, hit the ground in the fall, really running with some ideas, because I think we spent a lot of this past year trying to understand the problem,
Right.
and then we kind of ran out of time to kind of do something about it.
Yeah.
And it would help grants too. I know paying grant, it would definitely help. And I've even talked to the Catherine Morris, Miss Morris, who does the admin Twigs. Even she said that more clarity and feedback would be helpful. So I think it'd be across the board.
Given the concerns that we've had this year and the overall process and making things more clear, I think I'm going to try to take a stab at a revision of the policy that I'll bring so that we have something to start with.
Yeah, that'd be great. Yeah, thank you.
I think that, if we all agree, should definitely be on the agenda. Other things we've talked about over the course of the year have been field trips, particularly international field trips. We've kind of been talking about, should we have more of a policy on them, or I think a discussion around sort of our philosophy on field trips should be discussed instead of just sort of reacting to field trips that come before us. I think we should take some time to dig into what are we envisioning for field trips for our district going forward, and maybe having some sort of structure around it so that when we go into the school year and we get these requests, we can have sort of a shared,
The 10,000-foot view, I think, is kind
Yeah,
of helpful,
yeah.
because we kind of deal with them almost as
yeah, we
as they
react
come
to them
in,
as they
you
come
know.
before us, which they're obviously, teachers are entitled to write grants for them, and we've approved some great ones. But I know it keeps coming up like, oh, we should talk about
Yeah.
the bigger picture, and so I think a retreat's a good time to do that.
Yeah. And then, because it's hard to say no, which obviously we will say no if necessary, and we feel, but when it's presented, I think once we have something, then before something is even presented, they'll be able to see, oh, okay, this would fit into this wouldn't fit into that, so it wouldn't even
Right.
come to
Yeah.
us,
Yeah.
depending, if it doesn't fit into the category.
I think some clarity around that and the order in which things come to the school committee. Just in just the past 2 years, I want to say that we had interest, we had 2 foreign trips, so Spain and France this past year. Kids went, but the teachers came before the school committee first, if I'm not mistaken, and then applied for paying grants. Those paying grants were approved. This year, we had a situation where the group came before us for a field trip, and it was not approved through the paying grant process. So now we have a field trip that the school committee collectively wholeheartedly supported. Great opportunity for students that the paying grant committee did not support. So
I mean, it didn't come to us.
Is
again.
this
didn't even come to
Yellowstone?
us.
Oh,
It
okay.
didn't come to the school committee because if the way the policy is currently written, if a paying grant isn't approved at the committee level, it doesn't make it to the school committee level. That's the way it's written now, so.
Yeah, so that ties
To your
into
point, and
maybe
without
there.
getting into the weeds, I think to your
yeah.
point, that we need to look at
Just try
that
and-
process, you know, and I've already put together a list with the middle and high school administration, a spreadsheet of all of the field trips that we've gone on in the last couple of years. And so maybe one of the ways to look at it is, and this will come up in maybe the field trip conversation, but, you know, we know that last year, the music program went to England. We know that in another 3 years, the England trip is going to happen again. We know that as sure as we're sitting here now, and so you as a parent of a freshman now know that in 3 years, your kid is going to be going on that trip. You can plan accordingly, more or less.
Right.
But with a lot of our field trips, we don't know that. They come before us in the fall for a spring launch, and they may or may not happen. So maybe a longer look.
Dr. Blake, in that list that you have, do you have, like, budget or cost to
do.
families to, okay,
do.
and the breakdown
Yep.
and everything? Okay, that'd
Yep.
be helpful to.
Yep, and how they're funded.
Yeah.
Because a lot of the field trips aren't necessarily fully funded by, well, actually, I think most of them are, there's some fee involved.
Yeah. Yeah, the grants are usually subsidizing or. And then the other thing we often talk about at retreats is school committee and superintendent goals for the upcoming school year. So we don't necessarily, what?
I just said, nah.
Goals, schmoes.
You don't have to. I mean, we could push that to the fall and do it. And I mean, they're all open meetings, but we could do that in the fall. But to me, that falls third. I think these top two. But I'm also curious if anyone else had ideas or
Well,
don't say sustainability policy.
yeah, I am, because looking at the time, and I do think that would be a good one to kind of go line by line. I think we'd be really pressed for time tonight. If people are, I don't think it would take too long.
Also talk about it at the
You don't want to
retreat
do it at a
and not-
policy
Yeah.
subcommittee meeting?
Quite a policy.
I didn't read it. It was too long for
Yeah.
me. I will. I promise I will. And we're not voting
I
on it
know,
tonight.
and I can probably, like, provide some more
I mean, it's
context
great.
to it.
I don't mean that it's
No,
great.
no, I know, it, yeah, kind of,
11 pages.
It's 7 pages.
that wasn't, it was not solely authored by me, so that way.
I didn't hear, it wasn't fully,
Solely authored
There's a lot of
by,
editing.
yeah.
I mean, we
Asked for
circulate.
feedback, we got
Yeah,
feedback.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Envision you by candlelight with quill and ink, furiously writing this masterpiece.
I have a couple of ideas. Community volunteering. I don't know if that needs to be a retreat thing, but I think at some point we should talk about how we had mentioned it before, the school committee going into the community and serving or, you know, volunteering in some way. Another idea is, I know listening sessions were done for the school, school buildings, but I thought, again, maybe this is something talk about at the retreat or just another time, listening sessions in general, you know, like once every quarter, once every few months, you know, we can connect with the community and maybe gather or something like that and, you know, have people come in and talk to us about whatever it is.
Yell at
So,
us.
I don't know if that's something that summer retreat-esque, but those are my ideas.
Yeah, we've had that in, sorry. We've had that as a goal in, so when we build our goals, we often bucket them out, like we might have some goals around budget and some goals around, I don't know, other things. But we've had communication, when I was head of communications, we had some goals around community outreach. And so that could potentially be a part of a goals discussion too.
we sat by ourselves a lot of days.
Not by ourselves a lot of time.
mean,
But maybe we didn't
I
advertise
sat
it
at, I
enough.
sat at Marini's for an hour and a half by myself.
Yeah, I sat at Zoomies for an hour. I signed up for Zoomies, but it is a good idea.
You know,
Yeah, but maybe we could market it better or well, actually, one thing we didn't do is say, like, we're going to be at Zoomies to talk about
X topic.
chemical
Yeah.
health, you know?
Right.
It was just like, we're just gonna be there, and
Right.
so maybe if we gave some topics, or maybe people would come.
We
Or
talked
survey.
about that at,
Wait, so, Charlie was.
I was just
waiting.
gonna say, you could, like, in the newsletter, we could send out a survey, a link to a survey, of, like, what topics are people interested in? And it could be quarterly, like a series of meetings like that based on how people respond. So they know ahead of time, well in advance, this is what the school year will look like. We're gonna offer these for, or whatever it is, something people can plan for, and then have some input around.
That's a good segue, and I'm gonna cut you off, but
no,
then you can go next. It sounds like you might be interested in communications. So I also want to throw out there, everybody needs to look at our subcommittee. Mine's very sad and tattered. Subcommittees, working groups, and liaisons. We had discussed about possibly streamlining some of these, but I need people to email me what they're interested in serving on for next year, because
Am I allowed
there's
to
going to
do
be some
these?
turnaround.
Not typically.
Not typically.
Oh,
You
okay.
have a category, though. Someone works, right? Isn't there somebody who, like, works?
There
They
isn't,
make that up?
but there should be.
Oh.
It's typically the
Okay.
chair. It's typically the chair.
Oh, cool.
But yeah,
Just
but these
curious.
are the,
They sound interesting. I'm like a total nerd. Model UN, like
It's actually-
I mean, they're open
reforming
meetings.
language is like my
They're
favorite
open.
thing.
Subcommittees are
Oh,
subject
cool.
to open meeting law, so you could show up with the
Nice.
exception of negotiations, because it's an executive session.
I want to negotiate. Yeah. Okay.
Be on the school
Cool.
committee when you're kid over 18 and
Cool.
negotiate all you want.
Great.
So sorry, but you had an idea.
Yes. I have no idea. I'm totally new to this. That's my second meeting. In elementary school, I know there was a lot of talk about 2 school, 1 school. Is that still a thing that's happening? I have no idea about any of that. Sorry, I don't want to open a can of worms if it is, but I feel like that's probably, at least when I feel like that was an important issue years ago.
Yeah, sure, it is an important issue still, so.
Just
Very much so.
curious.
Yes.
That was still.
I am hesitant to talk about that at the summer retreat.
days long?
Well,
Yes.
yeah, but I don't want to, I mean, it is an open meeting, it's open to the public. Public typically doesn't attend. We don't make any like massive, we don't vote on things
Right.
or
It's
really
just a
decide
discussion. It's just a
things in the
discussion.
summer retreat, so I hesitate to discuss something like that in the summer retreat, lest we be accused of meeting at Turner Hill to talk
Evil
about
cabal.
the school committee, or the school
But it's
building,
totally-
but it's,
It's always good to ask questions, so it's
No, it's
fine that
good.
you don't.
It's-
Jenny,
yeah,
did you
it's
have other
still
stuff on your list? You mentioned the community volunteering and the listening sessions, and then we kind of took a, okay.
Yeah, thank you for asking.
I have
And I did-
ideas.
Diana, did you have something? Oh,
I was just going to say that at communications, we talked about a lot of what you were talking about, Jenny, and Open Door was full, I guess you signed up online, and it was full for the spring, so we were like, oh, let's revisit that in the fall, so that is something that at least our little group had kept in mind that I was going to
and Council on Aging, we tried to do too.
Did try that, and that
And then we just,
never-
it was a coordinating issue. We got it out, we got back to them too late for them to put it in their newsletter, and it kind of fizzled, but let's revisit it.
And the select board did like a coffee and bagels thing at Jetty's or something, and Jeff talked to them and said, oh, they said it went pretty well, but we were going to kind of see if they kept doing them and how it went, and then see if it was worth us going back to that, because we had heard that this little bug participation had been not great in the past.
What are you doing?
There's a bug flying around.
They have a good discussion.
I know.
I was just like,
Animated.
it just was right here.
It's pretty, obviously it's old. It has well left. Okay.
I have some
Oh, yeah,
ideas.
sorry, go ahead.
And this is going to sound vague, and I don't mean for it to be, but bigger picture for school committee. For example, that nice story that Marissa Scarano told us at the Pops concert about how in the 1950s, I believe it was the superintendent, or maybe the principal of the high school, made it a policy to bring music and arts into the classroom so that it wasn't an extracurricular activity. So, here we are 50, 60 years later with this amazing arts and music department, and that every kid is exposed to it in fourth grade, and we're the envy of towns because Hamilton Wenham doesn't know how to do that. And then they get to participate in other things after school. So we have these kids that do it all. So that was a visionary decision, and I think it was supported by the superintendent and the school committee at the time. I think we should have a discussion about what a long-term vision is. Do we want that, addition to the science wing of this? Or are we going to focus on STEAM? Or what we, the school committee, see as a vision for our school into the future, our district into the future. And I'm being vague, but maybe, and I just threw out STEAM as an idea, but, the elementary school buildings is a big issue of where the district goes, but more on a philosophical level where we want it to go, and then small steps in that direction as a committee.
Does that
I
tie
don't know how
into
to
the
label that
district
as an
provision?
agenda item.
Yeah, I think that long-term planning, I think, is certainly something that we can
Yeah, and then of
start to
interest.
tackle. Maybe, we're not going to resolve it that night, but certainly I think that, at one point, we had the Vision 2030
Right.
working group.
And I think along those lines, and then of, particular interest of mine is to kind of how to balance out, our arts and our athletics, and how that experience can be more balanced. How we support that to be a more balanced experience.
Okay. Okay, so I have all these ideas. I will work on an agenda, and if things, I might have to bounce some things to not be at the retreat, but I don't want to not discuss them, so I'll just have to think about.
Parking lot.
What?
We'll just
I mean, I
have
don't
to
want to
make sure
talk
we have
about
a
6
parking
things, but
lot.
only have 15 minutes for each.
Right.
I mean, I'd rather talk about 3 things and
Yep.
spend more time. But then maybe we do our goals in the fall, or maybe we do your ideas through the communications subcommittee or something. Because I also think, I'm open to renaming our communications. I think other towns call it like community relations or something. It could be revision to be a little bit more than just communication. So that could be an idea. But, they're all really good ideas, and I think we'll get to them all at some point. If not at the retreat, then certainly in the fall, but we'll do our best. Okay, so financial update, Tom. I'm only an hour and 20 minutes behind schedule. How you doing? Staying awake?
I have about a 45-minute presentation.
Ready.
With slides.
Ready. Bring it.
Slides and handouts. Thank you. But a couple of highlights here as we sit on June 24th, last week of the fiscal year. So I do want to call attention to a couple things, and certainly available to the committee anytime offline to review whatever you may talk about as the year winds down. If I could call your attention to page 25 of the year-to-date budget document. There were 2 documents in your folder, the monthly budget report and the monthly updates on revolving and funds. If I can call your attention first to the budget report, page 25. You see that the budget is expended at this point at 98.8% of the budget. If you look at the last 2 columns between encumbrances and available budgets, about $1.4 million left. The $1 million in encumbrances are all going to be spent. Those are things that we're still waiting for bills and a variety of things that have been encumbered to come in. They will mostly all be paid before the end of the fiscal year, but they'll certainly be paid before the allowance of the budget being closed. seeing 461,000 of available budget will also be well expended. The largest of that cost is going to be, we have 1.5 of payrolls left. This week is the last payroll of the year, and for those calendar nerds like me, there is 1 week in the last there's 1 week of a payroll that won't be paid until the July 1st pay period.
Okay.
Paid on a 2-week cycle, right? The last week of June and the first week of July will be paid out on July 11th. So we have to hold a 0.5 payroll for that. So we're closing as planned and pretty tightly. The second thing on the budget report I'd like to call your specific attention to is on page 22. Will be reflective in the revolving fund report as well. 22 in the top section under general fund, the last line, which is abbreviated as transfer to trust. You'll see in the far right column under available balance a negative $950,000. That is to confirm to the committee and the community that the $950,000 as approved at town meeting has been transferred from the fiscal '24 operating budget to the stabilization fund. So, confirmation of that. Those are really the three highlights, just in the closing of fiscal '24. But again, certainly opening for available rather any time for questions. Into the revolving fund and gift stabilization account, the large spreadsheet report. This is obviously it's a monthly report, so it's the balances as of end of May. We're almost at the end of June, but nonetheless, a July report. I'm pleased to continue to report that revolving funds remain in good stead. We are closing the revolving funds as planned, some of which will be, obviously, these balances, by and large, will be reduced by the end of June as we're closing the year. Probably the biggest thing to make a note of is we will be transferring to revolving funds as needed, the funds that have been, the expenses rather, that have been approved as part of the budget process. For example, we charge off at the end of the year certain utilities costs from the 2 elementary schools to the EDP program. Those transfers will be made. The same goes at the middle high school for school food services, for example. We'll be reassigning some out-of-district costs to the circuit breaker fund as in accordance with not only the eligibility for those costs, but also as per the fiscal '24 budget. We'll also be reassigning some of the transportation costs. So if you look at transportation, you'll see a negative balance there. We'll be transferring some of those costs into the transportation revolving fund as well. Second to bottom line, under line begins with T29 at the bottom. You see school stabilization fund, and if you did some relatively quick math between the end of April and the end of May, meaning post town meeting, you'll see that it's gone up by $950,000.
What page is the last thing you just said?
About the school the stabilization
Yeah.
fund. So that's on the large spreadsheet called our revolving gift and stabilization accounts.
Only one page. It's the,
That's a different PDF.
Yep, got it.
Okay, sorry.
No, it's all right.
So that's the PDF that has the monthly reporting about the fund balances for our special accounts, revolving gift and stabilization accounts. And referring to the actually third to bottom line begins with line T29, schools stabilization, flushing all the way over to the second and third to the last columns, meaning the April balance and the June, the May balance, it's approximately $950,000 higher in May than it was in June, which is reflective of all of the town meeting's action.
We have questions. This is not the time or place to ask them, like, line or budget, but, like, what do you do? Like, I just see, like, what's the middle school, high school parking pass, and what's, like, the tiger den? Like, just questions like that. How would I ask those?
Well, you could certainly shoot me an email if you like. You can come into the office. I'd happily walk you through everything.
Is there any way I
Know
could
that we were
get
talking about
access to this, or
possible-
put it in the
Sorry?
folder? Is there any way I could get access to or put it in the folder for the student rep meeting?
Oh, sure.
Thanks.
It's a public document. There's no question about it.
I just, yeah, thanks.
Yeah, I mean, in general, revolving accounts, a lot of times it's, money's coming in from, people paying tuition to
Right, but,
Tiger
like,
Shots and
like,
the money
like,
going
what
out.
is like, we don't have a parking pass. Like, what's that from?
Is what?
Like the middle school, high school parking pass. Like, we don't have to pay for parking.
Well, you think we used to.
There are fees that have been collected at the beginning of each year.
Oh, okay. Oh, gotcha. Cool.
That's what that would.
That's why it doesn't change.
Yeah, just I've never paid for parking. Just curious if I was missing payments or whatever.
Well, you just turned yourself in on.
On camera.
No, certainly, if you have other questions anytime, please shoot me an email and come on in to the office, or certainly this is an entirely appropriate form to ask.
10-11.
Well, maybe not at 10,
Right now.
10, but
I got, I got an email, a PowerPoint, like, budget primer that I got from our previous Director of Finance and Operations. I don't know if you have anything like that, or I could probably dig up my old one. That's just kind of like, what is some of the
And the
budget
last summer, I
101,
think,
kind of like
didn't
PowerPoint.
you
If I
and
could forward that
Sasha
to
come
you.
in?
Yes, yep.
So last summer, the two school committee members at the time, new ones, Sasha and Jenny, came in and we did sort of budget 101. So if
Yeah, it's
if
very
that's in the
helpful.
works, I'm happy to make that
Yeah,
happen
and
this
so if
summer.
Haley
Talked
wants
about
one.
that at the last meeting,
Yeah,
yeah,
we
Yeah,
could
we didn't talk about
together
that.
on maybe.
Let's do it, Charlie.
So I'd love to make that happen.
Thank you, Tom. Do people have questions for Tom? Seems like you're feeling good and things are on track and,
Things are on track, things are closing, yeah. Very tightly so.
we like that. That's good. But use it or lose it. We gotta use it all up, right? Using it all up. Great. Thank you, Tom. Policy update.
And unfortunately, we tabled this from the last meeting.
I
so
know, we really gotta do it.
Oh.
We can't table it again.
Can't table us anymore. We got 19. We're just gonna fly through. All right.
So this is should be in a folder in your drive.
Yeah. All right. Do you want me, they're a little different order in the folder, but I can go through in that order. Does that help people to click through? All right, I can do that. So DBG, just added some wording, no practice changes. FA, minor wording changes. FCB, minor reformatting. FF, minor rewording. FFA, minor rewording. EBJ. We made sure that what it says is what we're doing, and made a note about quarterly reports on budget transfers. So ensuring that if there is a budget transfer, that the school committee will receive a quarterly report on that.
This just got changed because
Everything is,
it's just not policy that we practice.
so we match everything to the MASC policies and then also to our current practice, and then decide moving forward what's the best
Yeah, so
practice.
the existing content was not current practice.
Correct.
That makes sense, because
Was DBJ, next. ED, title change and rewording to improve the process per Tom. And Tom did weigh in on all of these as they are very much in his realm. DEC is a new policy discussing how federal funds are used to supplement the budget.
wait, sorry, are we on DD still, or did you move?
Oh, I'm sorry. I jumped around, didn't I? I'm going by my list, which is in a different order than this one.
Oh, I see.
Oh, sorry, I'll go back to DGA. Is that helpful? Nope, I'm sorry. I'll go back to DD. DD, nope, to DD.
Yeah.
Sorry. DGA. Okay, there we are. DGA. Okay, so we changed the wording to match our current process, which is that either the chair or a designee by roll call can do the signing. It's been the chair this year.
It has, but I would like to change that, not tonight, but.
No, by roll call, we
Is it
can.
by roll call? Delegate some things.
DH was minor rewording. DI just added some minor wording and specifications. DIE updated wording to make sure it matches our process. DGC we deleted because it is obsolete, about petty cash.
We don't have petty cash, or
Correct, we do not.
we just have the Ipswich High School student accounts? and
DK,
That's different. We have gotten out of the practice of having petty cash outside of student activity. And those are not called petty cash. This was the sort of the old days, if you will,
Yeah,
when the principal or someone would have $100 in withdrawal.
Yeah.
So we don't want cash lying around. We want everything to go through an electronic process.
probably good practice.
You kind of looked at me and wanted me to say something.
No, I know, that's fine. That makes sense. I think that's.
the folder.
Trying to find
See
the,
the folder?
I just share the folder with you?
the 624
On the
meeting
top?
folder. And it's just a lot of,
I can share with you.
You don't have, it's not in the.
Was that the top?
Yeah,
Very top.
In 624 was its own window.
see, like in mine, it shows up there. It has its own.
Oh, yeah.
yeah, sorry, I have only files here, no folders. Yeah, that's this, though.
All right.
Sorry,
I'll
can
share
move
it.
it along.
Good to know, though. All right.
Did you get it, Haley? I can share it with you again. I mean, you have. Okay.
All right, DK, we mirrored the language in DGA, which we already discussed. DKC, Tom added some wording about taxes to match our policy and practice. EN, so this is not in the MASC manual, but we kept it because, if you all remember, last meeting, we voted to dispose of surplus
Old
materials.
textbooks.
Yeah, and so that just gives us a policy about that. Okay, now, okay, DEC, now here we are. So this is a new one that I talked about earlier. but-
DEC?
Yeah. That talks about federal funds. All right. HA, minor rewording. HB, rewording and redefines some the legal definition of, for negotiations. And HF was minor rewording. That's it for those.
Yeah, so, any questions on this?
Nope.
A motion to approve policies as presented.
Second?
Second.
Okay, so motion by Kate, second by Jen. Any questions? All in favor? Okay, 6-0.
Thank you.
Thank you. We finished, guys. Good job.
Yeah, you kept us on.
Everybody
Singing
did
your
their
praises
part.
this whole time.
Ship.
So quick word on sustainability, which I will gladly table, but so just the background, if everybody remembers, this was kind of something that came about this spring, and we viewed it here, and then we kind of took it on a roadshow and said, hey, what does this group think? What does this group think? So we got a little bit of feedback from the schools. When I sent it to the Waste Reduction Advisory Committee, they told me that they had actually started writing their own policy back in 2019 that kind of got derailed with COVID and everything. So then they said, hey, here's our policy, there's your policy. They really liked a lot of things in their policy, and they're super knowledgeable and have some really great ideas in there. So I said, well, why don't I just slide all that into our policy to keep the format, and then bring it and go from there. And so that's why it got really long, because it's basically two policies in one now. But I do think we could try to get it down to something a little more digestible and attainable. So I think I'd like to know how to take it from here. And in my head, I'm thinking there's two ways we could do it. One is we push it out till maybe the retreat and go through it a little bit more specifically. Or if the policy subcommittee wants to meet one time to give it a first pass, I'm open to either. And then if we did that, we could present it maybe in August and still hopefully get it rolled out before the school year starts.
Fine with me.
Or it could wait till the fall, or we want to have it in place by the time school starts.
I would love to have it in place.
Do you think it should be two policies? Or not? One on waste reduction and diversion, and one on climate change, environment. I don't know, I'm just wondering. It just seems that it's like by pages and pages, the longest policy we have, I think.
Yeah.
Which is okay. I just wonder if it's,
What do you think, Diana, would get better outcomes, sort of doing it as a smaller group in policy first and then kind of bringing it back? Or do you think having the whole group at the retreat look at it together?
I think like having a more focused group probably would be.
Then let's give it a crack.
Yeah. All right, if you guys are up.
Band
for
back
it.
together.
Let's get the
Let's do
bands.
it. Let's do it.
Let's get the cookies going again.
All right, so, and then we can have that discussion if it should be two or if we can get into one. And Dr. Blake, are you excited?
I mean, you don't need to go to every single. Fine.
That's what you've always
What's that?
I don't know. I don't know when.
Oh, right.
Well, yeah, then we'll cross that bridge.
And I don't think it's the end of the world to wait into fall, if we have to, scheduling wise.
Okay.
I know that's not preferable. I'm tempted to not give a lot of time at the retreat to it, because I personally think the other issues are more retreat appropriate. And I agree, I think a smaller group might be better to hash it out,
Yeah.
at least most of the
Well,
details.
Even if we decide on a late August date, like at least it keeps it rolling.
Right.
I guess that's assuming we're all still on policy. That's
Yeah.
another thing. Or should we
Wanna be
wait?
on?
till-
Yeah, I might be voted off the island with my minute-taking techniques, but
No,
I think
I won't be minutes. If you're on, I'm on. Sorry.
Well, maybe we can wait, not discuss it at the retreat, but once we know who's on policy after the retreat,
That's a good idea.
plan
Yeah,
to continue the discussion.
okay,
Okay,
that sounds good.
great. But in the meantime, if anybody has any
Wants to
thoughts
some
on
light
it?
beach reading, 11-page
Yes,
policy.
exactly, just light
Some
reading.
good stuff in there. It's,
Great stuff, yeah.
Yes, yes, it's very specific.
okay, so next agenda item is approval of subcommittee meeting minutes. You had wanted this on to see if there was any sort of like lingering meeting minutes from subcommittees for the year that we needed to approve.
Yes.
So I don't know if you have any.
I think I have 4 that I was on, but I guess we can't do communications because I'm the only one here, so,
Oh, right,
yeah.
yeah.
But we could do policy, facilities, and FEFIs, right?
did we have minutes that we didn't approve, Feffy?
Yeah, because we had like our last meeting and never met again,
Oh,
you know?
last meeting, okay.
Yeah.
Duh, yeah, makes perfect sense.
Do you want me to just roll off?
Because we're missing,
As long as we have 2 out of 3, we have a quorum, so we can.
what's that, yeah, what's the date? I don't have a computer.
So
I'm sorry.
I'll start with you. I move to approve the meeting minutes from the, what was the name of our working group? FE's policy working group from May 7th.
Second.
All in favor? Great. That one's done. I move to approve the meeting minutes from June 4th from the policy subcommittee with suggested edits.
Second.
All in favor?
Okay.
All right. And then facilities, trying to do those ones. April 3rd.
I should have sent an email about this agenda item.
What's that?
I should have sent an email about this agenda item, prepping people, because I don't have budget ready either.
It's in there. Do you want to vote on it or not? Okay. I move to approve the facilities working group meeting minutes from April 3rd.
I thought you were going to high five.
I love that.
Okay, great.
Okay, great. What else do we have? Nope. Okay, so moving on. So administrator contracts, we had an executive session much earlier this evening.
Yesterday.
Yesterday. So where we discussed administrator contracts and superintendent contracts, as they are not unionized employees, so we discuss contracts on a yearly basis. So we did that, and I can make a motion? I can make a motion to, first we discussed the administrator's salary proposal, so I would make a motion to support the administrator's salary proposal as we discussed in executive session.
Second.
So motion by Kate, second by Jen. All in favor? 6-0. Then we moved on to discuss the superintendent's salary and compensation as we do every year. So I would like to make a motion to approve superintendent's salary and compensation as discussed tonight in executive session.
Second.
So moved by Kate, second by Jen. All in favor? 6-0. All right, so those are approved.
Should be known, the length of our meetings is now killing her computer's ability to stay alive for the whole thing.
Sorry.
Oh, my.
Okay, so quick superintendent
Yep.
administrative report, and then
Very quick, since our last meeting, I had the final athletic update with the athletic director to review the spring sports program. We talked about the awards earlier this evening. Talked about the work that's being done in that department over the summer. Attended a meeting regarding the town wharf pumping station and the potential move to the field that's out behind the town hall. So that process is moving along, at least the discussions are. Wellness Committee met again and continues to work on the development of a new wellness policy with the goal of presenting it in August before school starts. Met with Stephen Crane this past week, the town manager, to update him on our current status with negotiations, and also to discuss the facilities director position. Chris Race has submitted his resignation to Stephen and I, indicating that he had accepted a job over in Linfield. We had a very successful Crane Beach Day this year. Last week I spent some time pulling together all of the information from the different schools, because it seemed to be in a whole bunch of different places, and I also talked to folks over at the town just to understand the whole process better and pull all of the information together. My curiosity got the best of me because we receive $5,000 from the trust every year, and the total bill for Crane Beach Day is well over $10,000. So we need to, make that up in the budget somewhere. So I was curious how that all was working out.
Not free?
What's that?
I thought it was like a...
No, it's just a trust that they give us X amount of dollars every year for it.
free to you. It's not free to us. For food and stuff.
June 13th was our last day of school with the students. And teachers participated in a variety of professional development activities on Friday, June 14th. I think overall it was very well received. It was all PD that they had asked for, so issues with attendance or anything. We've been working on closing out the year, organizing all of the summer projects. I met with both Chris Race to review all the work being done in the different schools this summer, as well as Keith. I have just a laundry list of all the projects that are going on, both in technology and in the facilities, just to get us ready for the fall. So lots going on. Taking advantage of some end-of-year available funds to fund some of the projects that we're doing. Off some of the low-hanging fruit, some things that needed to be done. So where we are.
I know it's late, but could you just talk a little bit about plans for these races?
Yeah, so
Or-
so Chris, as you may or may not know, Chris, the facilities director position is a position that's split between the town and the school, as well as the assistant facilities director position, Brad Orm. Brad. So they both work for both the town and school. They fall under, in terms of where they are housed. We have Brad here at the high school, and Chris's office is over at Town Hall. Chris was also doing the purchasing. He was the purchasing agent for the town and doing a lot of that work. So one of the conversations that Stephen and I are having is just what that position is going to look like going forward. Stephen is talking about perhaps maybe reorganizing how that entire department works and where it fits in the organizational structure, in terms of standalone facilities department, or does it belong under Department of Public Works or somewhere else? My concern isn't so much that, but that we have the most significant amount of real estate in the town, and so I need to make sure that we're getting our needs met in terms of the facilities director and assistant facilities. So those conversations are ongoing for, I think, at this point, we're looking at Brad taking over as the interim, and then we'll go through a process to look for new facilities director, unless we end up reorganizing the department, and then I don't know what that's going to look like completely. So, but for right now, Brad is going to be overseeing things. Chris's last day is next Wednesday, I think. So, marching forward with all the projects. I have all of the information on my desk now for what's happening, so I can keep up with things.
I had expressed to Brian the importance of, like, that's just it's a really essential role for us because of our aging buildings and all the things coming down the.
And that's been a position that's been combined with the town since long before my arrival here in Ipswich. I think at some point in the very distant future, there were two different positions. The school had their own facilities director, and the town had their own facilities director. I think issues, and so they ended up combining. Brought Brad on, I think, my second year or third year here to work more closely with the schools. Actually got absorbed. So Brad still spends the bulk of his time working on school-related issues.
Other questions for Dr. Blake? Subcommittee working groups and liaison reports. We heard from policy, we heard from negotiations in executive session. We have operations to onboard Haley later this week. Anybody else? Oh, Diana. Oh, communications.
Communications.
Love your subcommittees.
The draft newsletter is in the folder. You're still writing your piece?
I just wrote the first 4 words of it.
Okay. It looks great so far. So I will take out the piece about the sustainability policy because that didn't happen.
You could, do you want to have a few sentences that, just to let people know that it's in the works? Because I think it is an exciting policy.
Yeah, I can either
didn't approve
put
it,
it there, or I can put it
We're working on
under the
adoption.
activities and accomplishments, like where we kind of do just a little bullet point.
Yeah.
I'll put it there. So is there any other feedback?
Oh, you were efficient. You added in all the sports stuff.
Huh? This is number 12.
I will add my
Missing.
Yes, I guess maybe you would have to, do any other sections need to be written but mine?
So ideally it usually goes out on the last Tuesday of the month, which is tomorrow.
10:38, okay.
But
what time?
we can talk about when you can get it done.
Okay, I'll do it.
Okay.
So I think unless people don't trust me to write opening remarks of the chair, I think we can approve it without that. We don't even vote on it.
Yeah, no.
Okay, forget it.
All right, looks good.
Oh, I just have a quick, I did read this, I swear. I got down to most of it. Does it say, will the schedule of the newsletters change over the summertime since we're not going to be meeting? Is that something that, no, they'll just,
No, I mean, we don't have any plans to meet.
To do any?
Yeah, I mean, and there
Should it-
would be updates, like,
yeah,
you know.
yeah, that's, I didn't know if you should say that. Like, this is the
I can say it in my remark. Now you gave me something to say.
Did you
in
just
my
say?
You go.
opening remarks from the chair.
Oh, okay.
I will
Good idea.
say,
All right.
This is our last newsletter
signing
for the
off
year.
until
Right.
September. Any other ideas of it? Yeah, but we usually do take a break in July and August.
Yeah, well, it makes sense. Just
As far as liaisons, so the turf field committee, I wasn't at the last meeting
Where was I?
because we were at 8th grade graduation, right? But I am aware and read the minutes and have communicated. So the $140,000 that was not approved, but then actually was approved by this committee for the pain grant has been accepted, it looks like. And I guess there was discussion about the timeline of having to use it as a motivating factor to not only try to break ground and get it started, but also seek funds from other sources to get it going. So that's a positive.
And I think this is a good opportunity to clarify publicly that we had a little bit of a misunderstanding at our last meeting when we voted through the pain, or when we voted on the pain grant about the $140,000 for the turf field. So it was a vote of 3 in favor, 2 opposed, and 2 abstain. So that was the vote. The vote was accurate. We incorrectly said the vote failed because it was 10:40. Probably. We were tired. It was an error. We apologize. The abstentions should not count. So our school committee policy is it's the majority of the votes cast. So we cast 5 votes. It was 3-2. So that grant passed, even though we verbally said it failed at that meeting. So that is our mistake.
Makes perfect sense.
Yeah, it was late and it was, the abstentions threw, I think just threw us for a
Abstentions are
loop.
not votes.
Yeah, and we don't get a lot of abstentions, so I think we just sort of, we messed up. So, yes, good question. Obviously, the people that need to know in terms of dispersing the money and receiving the money are aware, so.
Sorry.
No?
Did you just decide a moment ago to include something that says we're not going to meet anymore over the summer, but we do have a July and August meeting set?
We're not going to send out a newsletter in July and
Sorry, okay.
August.
Again, we're at 10:40 time.
That's okay. So we'll have a meeting. We have a retreat in July, meeting August 22nd. We won't send out newsletters in August, July and August. Okay, so new business, just a quick, please send me your, what subcommittees, working groups, and liaisons you are interested in serving on for the coming year. It's up to the discretion of the chair to put people on committees. So I will do my best to give people what they would like. And I also, July is our reorganization meeting, so we do have the opportunity to turn over the chair and vice chair positions. So I would also like to throw it out if anybody's interested in serving as chair or vice chair for the upcoming year. If people could also email me that if you're interested, because then I think that will just make things more smooth if I have a sense of who's interested at the July meeting, and we will reorganize chair, vice chair, and subcommittees, which some or all of them can stay the same or turn over, but
The working committee still thing, or do they change?
the working groups, those are all, everything's sort of up for reassigning. But often people stay on things because they like them, or they're, halfway through a project and they want to continue.
Well, I know they were just annual, so I didn't know if they can.
They are, well, that's something else I think that I just added to our summer retreat is there any of these we can get rid of? Communication, subcommittees are standing, working groups are usually short-term. So we can have a discussion about whether these will continue. The liaisons are usually standing too, but there's a couple of them I think we could potentially like Town Government Study Committee, we don't have a position on that anymore because of what town meeting voted, so we can get rid of that one. Good question. Vouchers and bills should be all set. Consent agenda. Move that the Ipswich School Committee approve the meeting minutes from May 16th and June 6th, 2024.
Second.
Okay, motion by Kate, second by Matt. All in favor? Motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Moved by Diana, second by Jen. All in favor? All right, 6-0. Thank you very much.
Good night, Ipswich.
Good night, Ipswich.
Great summer.